Oh yeah, wait, before one big disclaimer, guys. And I don't even know why I'm making this because some of you use it as this anyway. But like kind of the point of this content is like you want to hear like what the class is good and bad at, I guess. And I don't know, it's just a tier list, man. Don't take it too seriously. I'm not telling you what I think is good. I'm letting the community tell you what they think is good. And it could all change and be wrong. So pick whatever class is the most fun for you and also blow up. All right, starting it up. Hello?
Hey.
Is this early for you, by the way?
No, it's noon.
Okay, don't...
I mean, no.
Yeah, don't throw the, okay, it's noon in there, because that's early for some of us. Okay, so, all right, so I want to hear about Mistweaver Monk. You're the first person I'm calling. And I want to hear, like, where Mistweaver's at right now. Is it fun to play? And then I can kind of lead you in some other areas, but, like, what's Mistweaver looking like in 11.1 right now?
It's a ton of fun. Mostly for keys. I don't tend to like the raid builds as much, but in keys it's a blast. A lot of our issues from season 1 got fixed, so like our single target problem isn't really a thing anymore. And then raid, I don't want to say that it changed because like we kind of do the same thing. It's just different for the Mistweaver playing it. Like your raiders aren't gonna know that something changed with Mistweaver, but your Mistweaver will know. So
Okay.
There's nothing like super drastic with raid being different.
All right. And what do you think in general Mistweaver is good at as a healer that other healers lack? And then maybe also something that you think they're really weak at that they could get better at that other healers are better at, respectively.
I think it's kind of the same problem that I don't want to call it a problem, but
it doesn't even have to be new, by the way.
Have.
This doesn't even need to be a new problem. It can be something that's always existed that you want to bring light to.
Yeah, we're the healer, right? Like we bring Mystic Touch, but it's not like a raid buff necessarily, I guess. So we have to have high throughput in order to be brought. Otherwise, you're just going to bring something else that can do similar throughput, but also brings, rescue or him or barrier or whatever.
Okay.
So I think we're in a good spot in terms of throughput. I think that our HPS is good, but I don't necessarily think that we're like super ridiculous or OP or anything. I think we're strong, and I think that we're strong in a way that is good because we're healing, obviously. The healing numbers are there this time.
Okay. Well, so I have two questions for you before I rate it. Is it do you think that this class will be two things, like in the Mythic Plus meta, like this is the healer in the comp you bring? And then secondary, is this in Mythic Plus, do you think it's bringable, like it's not something you would avoid to bring something else? And that can be due to a lot of things like class balance, but also like some dungeon sets have a ton of like curse dispels and things where like classes that can't do that are weak. I don't know how much you've looked into that, but like where do you think Mistweaver how do you think it'll feel in dungeons next season?
I think it'll be really similar to how it was in, I think, Dragonflight Season 3, where Mistweaver had high representation among high-level keys, but the highest keys were still done by Resto Druid. I think in this case, it'll be Mistweaver doing high keys, a lot of them good representation, but maybe Disc Priest will still do like the World First or the highest keys. So I don't think that it's bad to bring them, and I think that it's still a super viable option, but I don't think it'll be the absolute best.
So you think in Mythic Plus specifically, the raid buff issue is bigger than it is in raid?
Yeah, when we bring Mystic Touch and most melee don't actually do physical damage, that kind of blows a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of Mistweaver's damage is actually also not physical, it's nature from Crackling Jade and from our debuff that we have. So that kind of sucks, but then you're also competing with Fort Buff and PI with Disc Priest specifically.
Yeah, you could, like Shadow Priest could be meta, and then that's not a thing, and then that opens up some areas. But then also Resto Druid has like Mark of the Wild, right? So like unless, you're just kind of, it's just one of those examples where like Mystic Touch is, you will always bring a monk in any raid comp, but like it's just when you only bring 5 players, it doesn't stack up to the other ones for sure.
Yeah, it's like a fake. I don't want to say it's fake, but it's just definitely not as impactful as the others.
Okay, and I'm gonna ask you something for your opinion on. It's a little bit out of like I know you don't really care that much about rating, but I am asking everyone how many of the spec you're talking about do you think will be in the Race to World First comp that kills the last boss? So Mistweaver Monks, how many do you think are in the raid?
I think at least one. I'd be really surprised if there wasn't one. Some people mentioned 2, and I think that's not necessary. I don't really see a world where you bring 2 Mistweavers unless our throughput is so beyond everyone else that it just doesn't compete. I don't think you need 2. So just one.
Why is that? What makes you think 2? I mean, it's like just say like throughput is great, but like what do you think it's like working at a disadvantage? Does it not have like raid buffs that other classes have, or like raid cooldowns? externals? Like what makes you think that 2 is like not great?
I just don't think that we're at a point where the raid is tuned to the point where you would need 2 Mistweavers for throughput, and we're also not far enough ahead where Mistweaver would be the, the other choice for healing, because you could bring something else that does something similar but also brings like all the other utility that other healers have.
Yeah. And I guess like Mistweaver's Power Word Barrier, Mistweaver's Aura Mastery is kind of revival, and there are fights where that is amazing and fights where it's just like a healing cooldown rate. So okay, yeah, I get it. All right, so we got that 1 monk. I mean, even saying 1 monk confidently though is still like that's a pretty good thing. It's not like most raids you wouldn't feel like, oh, there will be one of these in the comp. That means you feel like it's pretty strong, which is, it's very rare you actually run 2 of any healer. Like if you look at it historically, it's like super broken disc, super broken Holy Paladin, or most recently super broken Prez, right? Like 2 of something is crazy strong. Okay, you got to put it on the list. So the top one is 5 big booms, and the bottom one is Walmart, and then there's a bunch of ones in between.
I don't think we're 5 big booms big. I think we're definitely A. We're definitely good, but I don't know if you have someone that maybe doesn't like Mistweaver, if they would play something else and do better on it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. When you just said 5 big booms, it's just so fucking... it's so funny. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is for also rated Mythic Plus combined, and it's kind of a meme, so not super important. But basically, it's a rating where, like, if you're a Mistweaver, you're feeling happy going into the patch. You're feeling good.
Yeah, we're feeling good.
Right.
I don't think we're gonna get nerfed. I don't think we necessarily need buffs or anything, so I'm happy.
All right, happy class. All right, great to talk to you, Meg.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye. All right, I think we're gonna call Automaticjak. Bro, what are you? Aren't you in a key right now?
What's up? Yeah, you said after the key.
Yeah,
and
but then
like, okay.
But then you started a key after.
So you like messaged me right as we were resetting the key, and then I was like, oh, okay, he's doing like other stuff. We can do it right now if you want.
Well, okay, so I already did Mistweaver, but what healers do you feel confident answering these questions? So like generally, what is the class good and bad at? Is it in do you think it's in the Mythic Plus meta, and how many do you think will be in the Race World first comp? What healers do you think you can cover of that?
I can talk to whatever. Yeah, I've been playing all of them in keys.
All right, fuck yeah, that's significantly more convenient for me. So you've been playing them all in keys, and then obviously you pay attention to raid testing. I saw you made a YouTube video recently about which ones you thought would be good in raids, so you've thought about all of this. Do you agree with Megasett's Mistweaver thing? She said that it feels bad in dungeons because their raid buff isn't good enough compared to other healers like Priest and Druid, but they do good damage. They do a lot of throughput. She thinks one of them will be in the Race World first, and she ranked it in A, and the only higher tier is 5 big booms. So she thinks it's pretty good. Do you like roughly agree with that?
Yeah, I would say the thing that makes it feel, I don't know, like not the most amazing in keys is the fact that you kind of are like almost resource bound. You kind of run out of juice after a certain point. So after, your Shayloons at max stacks is expended, or your Celestial at max stacks or your Celestial is expended, you can't really like light your mana bar on fire and do really good AoE healing, decent. But Druid as like an inverse to that, you could just keep on stacking more and more and more hots over and over and over again to be able to like push through in like really high healing environments like Swamp Face, which is the third boss in Floodgate, which is just like all rot damage and a little bit of burst.
Okay.
So you can just like keep on like pumping through. So,
okay. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so I have a question. Let me pull up your stream again. Can you, every single time we talk about a new healer, can you increase the speed on your treadmill by like 0.2?
If you spell my name right.
Oh, come on, don't do that.
Okay. Well, it only goes to 4 miles an hour.
Well, what is it now?
2.1.
That's fine. So when we're talking about the last healer, I want that shit on 4.
All right, bet. Hang on, let me go to voice activation. Be holding on for dear life to the death.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
All right. Well,
bet.
let's start with the healers you play the most. Let's start with Holy Priest. So what do you think?
Okay.
And I don't want to. This is not supposed to be like super in depth, like talking like hella
quick.
in depth. It's kind of quick, but like what do you think Holy Priest is good and bad at compared to other healers?
It's really good at raid, and it basically provides spot healing plus just consistent healing. They reworked it so you're in Apotheosis, which is like your cooldown for almost half the fight, if not more. And so you can do some like combo burst AoE when you need to, and then the rest of the time you're just doing good single target healing, evening out health bars.
Okay, great. And also I think they got a cheat death this patch too, right? Like a real,
yes.
It
doesn't cost you output. It was always on the talent tree, but it would cost you output. But yeah, you survive all the mechanics, You should never die, and you just pipe lots of healing.
Yeah, I mean any class gaining a cheat death basically, which is if you didn't take it before and now you take it, you gained it, right? So
Yeah.
I mean that's any class in the game that would be. If you look at any class on like death meters on Warcraft logs, although Holy Priest famously screw up that entire chart because of the way Angel Form works and everything, but like if you look at the classes that don't do that, if you gain a cheat death, your deaths get cut in like half in a raid. It's fucking broken. So very, very good for Holy, and then they're good at raid. Okay, cool. What do you think Holy Priest is in the Mythic Plus meta next season?
Not at all. No, nowhere close.
Okay, what about raid?
Very much world first. Yeah.
So you think there will be one Holy Priest in the race world first comp? Well, Priest is weird because like you could say there's like two Holy or two Disc, and like there could be fights where it's the same two players on the same two characters that just swap specs, so it's like less hard to commit to. It could be either.
Yeah, I think if like we were in a world where Disc and Holy didn't share like a class or something, it would very much be in the conversation of like you could bring one of those on its own merit and its own value. There's very much going to be some fights that you could double Disc on, but there's definitely some fights where you'd have that second Disc switch to Holy, and they're not there just because they could sometimes play Discs. They're there because Holy and Race would be good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Where would you put Holy on the list? Mythic Plus and raid.
Because it's because this is a cumulative list, right?
It has to stand on its own. It is standing apart from Discipline Priest.
I guess like B. Yeah.
B for Holy Priest. Okay. All right, we're moving on to the next healer. Turn that shit up. I'm watching you live.
Right.
Turn it up.
Let's hear it? Do you hear it?
Yeah, fucking heard the beats.
All right.
We're good. All right. Moving on to Disc Priest. What is Disc?
Okay.
Disc has seen like probably the most changes of any healer in the last like 6 months, maybe a year or so. So like what is Disc like right now?
Disc is insane at burst healing. It just absolutely crushes it whenever there is burst AoE that's required for your team. And just like we had with the Holy conversation, they also gained a talent that they usually didn't take in raids called Lenience, which gives 3% damage reduction to any ally with Atonement on them. So it's kind of like a little passive Devo aura that also it doesn't require any loss of healing or anything like that. So when it comes to a raid environment, they are blasting tons of burst output in the windows that you need it. And it's gotten easier to do it since you don't have to smite as much during downtime anymore to get your pet back. Your pet is there at very consistent moments. There's no pet cooldown reduction, which is something I know Nick was really, really hoping for last race. So they finally got that, which is awesome. And in keys, most of the deadly damage profiles are burst AoE, which Disc excels at. And since you get a lot of cooldown reduction from haste with your Mind Blast, which helps your hero talent, you also just have really consistent uptime with it. So even rot damage is not as deadly anymore.
Okay, so I have one counterpoint. So recently, kind of the criticism on Disc has always been the really good big bursty ramp healer, but since the introduction of the talent trees, there's so many healers that have strong ramp cooldowns that it's made Disc's ability to ramp less unique. Do you still feel like that exists in this tier, or do you think they stand alone?
You're absolutely correct that it's not as unique anymore, but tuning is just so in favor of Disc that like Prez obviously was super highly tuned in Nerebar and was able to set up ramps more easily.
Yeah.
Now Disc has a lot of favorable fights where you're not as punished for the movement since they changed around your pet, and you just do better healing than Prez does in raids at the moment, and you bring barrier, and you bring lenience. We could talk about healer damage, but
Yeah. Oh, I mean, last year, like, people were down on Disc because you didn't bring them, but Disc, in my opinion, was actually better than Holy last year. It was just, didn't make sense to bring Disc with Prez. Like, Prez was just a better Disc at everything Disc did, and Holy complemented Prez, so you just didn't play it. But yeah, that makes sense. Right. Okay, so is Disc Priest in the Mythic Plus meta?
100%, yeah. Top of class.
Okay. Is Disc in the Race World first comp, and if so, how many?
I think there's, of like the later bosses, the boss fights that matter, there's like definitely one arm bandit, and I think there's potential for Muggsy to have some double disc action. So I would say 5 big booms.
Oh my god, 5 big booms, the first one. Holy shit. All right, turn that shit up.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, I heard it. Oh, geez, that was 4. Gee, okay. All right, what about Resto Druid?
All right. God, what is Resto Druid good at? No, I mean, it's got a flatter ramp healing profile than Disc does in a raid environment, which is always cool. So you can have some kind of more consistent healing than a Disc Priest would have, which has very narrow ramp profiles. You do a ton of healing at one moment, then you stop. Druid has quite a bit more sustain than that. which is nice. They made some changes to mastery in 11.1 so that you could heal more when it comes to lower stack counts out of your mastery hot. So your regrowth actually does something if it hits a target with rejuve and like spring blossoms or something, instead of doing like nothing at all, which is nice. So you actually have some decent spot healing when it comes to raid healing, and it's not just Holy Priest. Obviously, Mark of the Wild's great. They are not so dependent on cooldowns to do good healing in a 5-man environment, which is awesome because there's a lot of varied burst healing profiles. Sometimes you go like rot into additional AoE. Sometimes there's nothing and there's just big burst AoE. There's a lot of bleeds in the dungeon pool, which also makes it really beneficial to have good spot healing. So a lot of good stuff there.
Okay. Do you think Resto Druid is in the Mythic Plus meta?
Yes, I think it's just above Mistweaver.
And then like interchangeable for Disc Priest based on whatever DPS you bring.
Maybe.
Or do you think Disc
PI,
is just better?
PI is really good.
Yeah, you get a PI from
I think
Shadow Priest though.
You could. If Shadow is really good, then 100% our Druid would be able to pop off.
Okay, W. And
Yeah.
will Resto Druid be in the Race to World first comp? This is tricky.
I don't know. If Disc gets any like nerfs or something, I'd say yeah. I think it is on like the bubble. It is like very, very close to being a lock in World First, but I would say not quite yet.
Well, I think the weird thing with there's a few specs really. Like Holy Paladin has been like this historically, or not been like this historically because it's like always brought. But like Resto Druid and Mistweaver, a few of them like non-priest healers and non-prez. It's like okay, whether they're in that Race to World first comp or the top healer comp, they're the fourth of the 4, and it's
Right.
like depending on how good the DPS and tank specs are for that. So it's missing a lot of information. Like for example, Resto Druid on its own merit might not be good enough in any given raid to be top 4, but you might bring it. I mean, we did this on Sarkareth, I think. We brought them on Sarkareth, and they were not one of the best 4 healers, but Moonkin and Guardian Druid were so bad that you just didn't want those, so you made do with Resto. So it's hard to answer a few of these because of that. But okay, where's Resto Druid on the list?
Oh, it's definitely A.
Ooh, solid. Okay, so all the healers so far are looking very good. All right, let's talk.
You could probably put it behind Mistweaver. Yeah.
All right, turn it up.
All right, we don't have too much left to go.
All right, fuck yeah.
All right.
All right, here we go. So we got I want a wide run. Okay, so let's get. So we have 3 more healer specs. So Prez Evoker. What is this thing good and bad at? We just got off it being maybe one of the most broken healers of all time. What's it look like right now?
Right. And afterwards, they really bodied its burst healing, and it was kind of struggling to find a place as where it's going to go. They made some changes to Flame Shaper specifically and made it so you're actually getting some cooldown reduction for, I believe it's your breaths after you're casting your engulfs, which is a big part of like your ramp profile. And so it's going to get a little bit better in that regard, but it's still nowhere near as close as it was or as powerful as it was in Nerebar Palace.
Okay.
So it's like good ramp healer, but also with the fact that they're going to bring different evokers. You're not really getting into a situation where you're like, oh, we would bring this because we need type spiral or something along those lines. It would have to be doing so much healing or do healing better than Disc Priest to really find its like niche in a world first environment.
Okay. What about Mythic Plus?
It requires so much work to do good healing in M+, compared to other specs. It's pretty annoying. You have so much combo gameplay that you have to set up. So many different ways to do it, which is fun. But if you just compare it to like a Disc Priest who hits like 2 or 3 modifier buttons, hits Radiance, does damage, you heal. There's so much more that you have to set up, and it feels like a lot more work to do good healing. Your ceiling of healing is high. It's just very, very punishing, even more so than Disc Priest to do good healing consistently.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also I think raid buff is an issue. Just like whatever a Prez Evoker brings to a dungeon, you're already most likely bringing in an AUG, at least historically, and you're not bringing like a really powerful raid buff, which is, I just feel like raid buffs in dungeons are just such a problem. But okay. So I asked if it's in the Mythic Plus meta. You said probably not. Will you be playing a Prez in the Erased World first comp?
Almost certainly not, as it stands right now. Yeah.
Okay. So where does this go on the list?
I guess I'd probably put it around a C. Yeah.
Okay.
It can do good healing in 5-mans, and it does way better healing than Holy Priest does in 5-mans. But it's also just, if you're working this hard, why aren't you playing like something else if you want to like push really big keys?
Because it's fun.
Something along those lines. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Woo! All right, we have 2 more. We have Holy Paladin and Resto Shaman. Is that thing up at the top? You are fucking walking right now. You are walking.
One sec.
You are walking big time.
There we go.
All the way. Let's
Gotta
fucking
lean
go.
in.
We got 2 more.
All right.
Yep. All right. Holy Paladin.
What do we got?
Holy Paladin.
Stinker spec.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, stinker spec.
Okay, so not very good. They don't have what? They don't have good spot healing, cooldowns. What about them stinks?
They don't do good healing. And Devo Aura does not make up for that, or Aura Mastery does not make up for that. There's so many encounters where you can stack up for big raid-wide damage, which lends itself to, like Disc or, I don't think you bring Shaman, but, Spearling could be better or something like that. The spec just needs to do more healing than it currently does. That's just about it. They have no good niche. Paladin, as you know, was dropped for Kaveza because the healing profile, oopsie, it just stopped.
It's fucking started up again.
Healing profile of healing profile out of Kaveza, for example, was really good stacked healing. And then that was something that Prez just did all of. And then when it came to actual spread healing in the intermission phase, you were getting not really much value or not really much output or anything along those lines for those intermission phases. So you didn't really have any sort of extra benefit for bringing the Paladin to the table. There was no extra point to it. And unless they make it just do almost equivalent healing with everybody else, or they fix some of the healing profile issues with like Herald only doing good healing when everyone's stacked, I don't know. Like it just feels like it's lost.
Okay, yeah. Well, I would ask if it's in the Mythic Plus meta or how many in the Race World First Count, but it sounds like it's not in any of those things.
Neither, yeah.
Yeah, where would you put this on the list?
Like a D, yeah.
Oh, not Walmart?
I'd put it at Walmart. I would put it at Walmart.
Let's go. It's Walmart tier. Fuck Walmart. All right, Resto Shaman.
One last thing for Pally before we swap over.
Mm-hmm.
One big reason why certain specs are good right now in dungeons is because their talents can scale really well in 5-mans. They even made it so specifically Atonement scales in 5-mans. Mistweaver has like lightning that you're really only running in a 5-man environment. Druid can stack up their hots with their mastery to blast tons of healing on 5 players. Paladin doesn't have anything like that, and it extra feels like you are just getting gapped by like large amounts as you start going into heal check fights over 12s.
All right, stay small, Holy Paladins. All right, Resto Shamans.
All right, hang on.
You're getting a workout. This is good. Yep, turn that shit the fuck up. Turn it up.
All right, this is the last one, right?
This is the last one. You're almost there.
All right, set up to max.
Oh my god.
All right, let's do it. Rest of Shaman, also one of the Lost Boys. Raids, trying to think about what it's actually good at. They got rid of Primordial Wave, and they replaced it with a talent that causes your healing waves to cleave onto Riptides all the time now, which is good for, low to moderate sustained damage over long periods of time, which is not at all rating in 2025, nowhere even close. There isn't this like reward for good efficiency. It's a reward for like burst output. It's a reward for damage reduction. And Slink's fine, but Barrier's better in all the different environments where you would use Slink. The burst output is just kind of mediocre. Where it really shines at is like spread healing. And we saw that on Kaveza again, where you had players spread out to the 4 winds, Ascendants could pop off. There's not really those fights in the last 3-ish encounters, 4 encounters that we tested. So I don't know. In Keys, it's pretty fun, but it's very resource bound, where your healing stream totem, once you kind of run out of healing stream totems to take advantage of, your output just kind of flattens out pretty hard, and you're stuck spamming surges to try to keep people alive, to try to take advantage of downpour. There's other specs that gap it in high keys, and it doesn't really have anything it super excels at in raid.
Yeah, it also has the problem of, it's been for the past 4 years, but like there's just other shaman specs that they have a really good raid buff now, right? But it's just like other shamans have been really, really good. Okay, do you think you see a shaman in Mythic Plus at all? So this is top
for
level.
people who are more casual about it. Top end, no.
Okay, and then how many Resto Shamans are in the Race World First Comp?
0.
Well, fuck. Okay, well then it needs to go on the list somewhere. Where does it go?
I guess I'd put it right above Pally at the moment.
Oh, D.
Performs better in keys. Put it at D. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is kind of how tier lists are supposed to work, where like you put them all like right next to each other. It looks very even. We like that. All right, cool. All right, thanks for walking with us. Dude, you are fucking moving right now.
Yeah, I'm good.
That is good.
I'm good.
Okay, all
when
right.
are you getting yours, Max? Come on, I know you love us.
Huh? Oh, I don't need to do that. Do the walking thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to walk while doing other things that I'm normally sitting for. You know what I mean? Also, walking's actually pretty good for recovery, but I just like do too much shit. I burn hella calories in a day. Probably don't get a lot of steps
doing
though.
hockey?
Yeah, I play like 1 to 2 hockey games a day. I burn like over 1,000, close to 2,000 a day, depending on if the games are hard or not.
That's huge.
Yep, W. All right. Love you, bye. See you later. Holy fuck, it smoked. All right. Meg just messaged me and said My chat suggested if Jack casts for Team Liquid again, to let him use the walking pad for the memes and just never address it. That is a good idea. My bit is when I saw Jack do his when I saw him do his most recent video where he chose to do a tier list while he chose to make a YouTube video while walking, that I just thought it would be such a funny bit for someone to do this but not mention it. But instead of like doing a walking YouTube video, someone should just be full sprinting, like running as fast as you possibly can and struggling to get the words out, but not ever talking about it. Just like nothing's weird or different. Just making a YouTube video here while like totally fucking exhausted. I want someone to do that, not me. I acknowledge it's a good bit. I just don't know who would do it. Cold Dork, dude. Are you a genius? Have you played all the tanks on PTR?
Not to the same extent I normally do.
What are you casual or what?
Yeah, I mean, you already know. I haven't really been playing as much as I normally do.
All right, well, if anything, we can just make it up. All right.
Yeah, just fucking make it up.
All right, what about warriors? What are warriors good and bad at?
Wait, are we talking about raid 2? Or what?
This is raid and mythic plus. I'm going to ask you 3 questions for each. I'm going to ask what the class is good and bad at, and then I'm going to ask you if you think it's in the mythic plus meta, and then if you think it will be in the race world first comp.
All right, you already know with raid. I'm gonna completely make that shit up. I know.
I fucking love
zero
that.
about this
I
raid.
love that. I mean, raid tanking is just like you're kind of guessing whether you need the raid buff from that point. That's part of it, but then also if it specifically does a ton of single target damage and is generally tanky is like the main thing.
Yeah, and I would say like it heavily depends on how every other spec's performing, right? Like you're gonna want a guardian druid if the other druid specs are just complete dog water.
That's true, but there's also other things like you've played Guardian Druid in progression 3 times in the last 10 years. So it's like really rare, and like it's usually like every like 5 or 6 years you play it. So it's like they just had their raid, right? So like historically they're not going to be good for a while, but also that means nothing, you know. They could be. All right, well, what's warrior good at? They do big
warrior,
damage.
Okay. Yeah, warrior good single target damage, but for M plus this time around, I think it's gonna be terrible. At least from what I've tested, just because of how brutal the dungeons are. Like, so basically, warriors' strengths are extremely good, but their weakness are also super glaring. So when you have like bleeds, when you have tons of constant magic damage, like because you only have so many tools to deal with magic damage, right? Like you have spell reflect, you have spell block, then you have your walls, and you run out of that shit real quick when you're fighting stuff that just do constant magic damage.
Yeah.
Like Rix of Flux Flame, you know, like Motherload. We're getting Motherload back this season.
Yeah, but they used to be like the best
already know how
Motherload
that
tank
shit looks.
because they had spell reflect. Does that not work anymore?
Well, no, I mean they were playable in Motherload, but it was absolute hell. Like
Yeah.
anyone who played back in BFA, like very know, like you could have made it work, but you had to do every possible thing to keep a warrior alive. I remember people were zoning out after second boss. That was like a really common strategy for Pro Warriors.
And then you'd
They
go
would
into
zone out
full
and they were
verse
just like
gear.
specking to. Yeah, like they just put on like all this shit to live the magic damage on the last 2 bosses. But yeah, I mean, unless they adjust the content to Pro Warriors' strengths, I think Pro Warriors is one of the weaker ones. But normally they are really strong. Like they are actually a brick wall when it comes to just taking pure physical damage.
Okay. W.
Yeah, so I'm gonna.
Where they go?
This is one. I'll give it a C.
Okay, that's good.
It's a little bit sneaky.
That's fine. I mean, it's I don't know,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like a C tier tank could be in the race if like DPS warrior sucks, you know?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the other thing too. Like I think right now Arms Warrior seems really good DPS wise, so I automatically assume that Pro Warrior is gonna suck
Yeah.
in raid.
All right, fuck yeah. All right, Guardian Druid, you're main. You're a main. You're a bear.
Yeah, that's me. This shit sucks. Its damage is low, but it lives pretty well though. I mean, it's got a lot of defensive cooldowns. It honestly felt good to play, but I just wish it did damage. If it did damage, it would be good. But right now, it's like easily the lowest tank damage. I'm just gonna straight up put it right along C with Pro Warrior. At least it doesn't have glittering weaknesses the same way Pro Warrior does. I'm pretty sure anyone who's playing Bear Tank, they'll probably do just fine surviving any of these dungeons. In fact, it would probably feel really good surviving these dungeons, given how easy Bear Tank is to play.
Oh, I want to point out,
Yeah,
someone in chat also said Prot Warrior highest simming tank at the moment by quite a bit if they can spam execute. I remember having this conversation before every single raid where Warriors tuned well, and it's like, well, if we can just have this tank execute in the last phase, and it's never possible. On like any hard fight, it's impossible to just not tank and execute, and it just never ends up doing that in practical use.
Yeah, I've seen some tank sims. I can pull this up right now. Yeah, like it actually pops off, but like you said, it's not realistic. It's definitely one of those like you're attacking a target dummy type of situation. If
Yeah.
you're doing actual race the world versus tanking, there's like zero shot you're doing remotely this damage.
Yeah, exactly. All right, what about blood DK?
Actually looking a lot better than most people would expect. I think it's because like every other tank didn't really get much and they've gotten weaker relative to Bloody K, so I would say Bloody K is actually one of the better tanks. And given Bloody K's historical performance in raid, it definitely scores high. I'm just gonna say straight up A.
Oh
Like
shit.
an A tier tank. If we're to include yeah, raid as well, because like for M plus specifically, it still suffers from the same problems where you'll eventually get to the point where you just kind of get clapped, right? There's not a whole lot of solution around that as a Bloody K. And it's just how infinitely scaled content is designed for Bloody K. This class just runs out of buttons, and your base mitigation of just death striking isn't going to allow you to survive dangerous pulls at high levels. But they are actually one of the really high damage tanks right now. I mean, we can see in the Sims here, and also just in M+. Like, they're one of the few tanks that actually do good damage right now. Like, we all know tank damage right now is pretty garbage. So, it's not going to be M+ meta, but if you're not doing the highest keys in the world, it's actually going to be extremely strong. Think in raid, it's probably going to be really good too. So I'm just completely making it up for raid.
Yeah. I mean, they've always been good for raid just because you bring a DK for grips and they're just twice as good at it as any individual DPS spec, so you just end up bringing them. Plus, they're always like Blood DK has been. This is why the tank changes at the beginning of the expansion were like really controversial because like in Mythic Plus you felt it so much, but in raid like DK's went from being invulnerable last expansion to like not needing any healing this expansion too. Nothing like they still feel that way, but it's like just it's a raid specific damage intake thing.
It's also AMS. Oftentimes you can like
Cheese
not really
shit.
cheese, but like
You can
it
definitely
makes
cheese
it
shit.
so much. Yeah.
AMS is
Especially like I
super
remember
broken.
tanking jail or like just being able to AMS of a big tank blast thing is like so OP, and it's on such a short cooldown too.
Okay, you can pick any of these to talk about next. Brewmaster, Prop Paladin, or Vengeance.
Vengeance I think has gotten some of the bigger changes. I don't know why Vengeance got buffed so much and every other tank didn't really get affected. So this is definitely looking like one of Ven Plus tanks, and because all the tanks kind of suck right now, I'm not gonna put any of them at 5 big booms. So this one is gonna be an A. Also, 5 big booms is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, I'm just gonna put it in A.
Okay.
Like probably top of it. Actually, I just put an A. Like straight up, yeah, I just put it right there with Bloody K. Because like, if we were to count raid too, like I don't know if I would include VDH in raid. VDH is like rarely seen in raid except for when Havoc is just complete doo doo, and even then, I don't know. I mean, like we occasionally see Havoc over Vengeance. Vengeance is just like not as hot. But yeah, like they buffed Vengeance a lot. They've changed some of the hero talents in Eldraki Reaver tree. Right now, there's a talent called Wounded Quarry, which is basically a pure funnel talent. Like we have not seen funnel like this before.
Wait, a tank
both,
has good funnel?
For both. Like
Oh,
right now,
for
Havoc
both
and
Havoc and
Vengeance
yeah.
has
Okay,
crazy
yeah.
funnel. Yeah, so
I knew about Havoc.
yeah, the way it works is like whenever you're just like cleaving over targets, it does damage to your main target with that you mark with Eldraki. So it just does like pure funnel damage, insanely good in M+. Raid, I can't really say. I don't know, probably not that amazing, but it is what it is. And we actually have really good self-sustain too. They're one of the higher self-sustaining tanks. Eldraki is really good for that. It generates more souls. It's got increased healing. It also got buffs to make spikes basically perma, and you can take your cheat death plus the talents that the class discords usually recommend. You know how for basically all of Dragonflight there was a huge argument.
Yeah, the builds for
amongst-
Vengeance DH, right? It was like
yeah
every streamer had their own build. The class Discord had like the full throughput, no good abilities build.
yeah basically you had the bad build, aka what the streamers were playing, like me now and Kira and like Yoda and all these guys. Like we're all playing the bad build that has like cheat death and stuff. Like cheat death literally does nothing, right? It's for complete bitches.
Yeah.
But that's what the streamers do, and that's what they promote. And the tanks over at the class Discord, they play like the Giga Chad build that just gives them tons of DR, tons of damage, tons of healing. I mean, that's like really good, right? But now
Yes.
you can actually have both. You can. They reworked one of the talents, Feed the Demon, to only require 1 point, and that allows you to take all 3 capstones. So that's kind of OP. You can have cheat death plus the big healing damage and whatever tankiness. And Yeah, you have perma spikes uptime now too, because they buffed demon spikes by 2 extra seconds for absolutely no reason. So
Wait, you have
really good
perma?
tank.
You have
I think Demon
100%
Hunter-
uptime on spikes?
Well, it's close. It's probably realistic, like 80, 90%. But like, given that you play well enough and pulls don't last long enough, it's basically 100%.
Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so you'd put it in A. All right, what about Brewmaster?
Brewmaster hasn't received a whole lot of changes, except for I guess there's one kind of major change. The big one is Celestial Brew. Your cheese stacks only it cap at 6 now, and because it caps at 6, each stack gives you more. So that's like a pretty big buff to Celestial Brew, and it actually has felt really good to play. Like you just purify twice, and you'll have a big Celestial Brew. It's like completely different from what it normally is, where you have to like build up a big shield. I'd say it's still Brewmaster. We already know how Brewmasters feel about Brewmaster.
What is
It's
that?
one of
How do Brewmasters feel about Brewmaster?
that the class never gets any changes and that they need help, but Blizzard doesn't give a fuck about Brewmaster. But I've always said that Brewmaster is like more of a raid tank. Like it's almost always been good in raid, so I'll give it that. Probably just put it in B, I guess. It's a good tank, honestly. I
B
think
for
it's better than
Brewmaster.
ever before. Yeah, B for Brewmaster.
Let's go.
I would say like in M plus, it's the best it's been in a while. Not that that really means a whole lot, and I mean.
I
It's
mean,
always
one
good
of
in
its
raid.
big problems is like even if it was like decently good in Mythic Plus, every slot at Mythic Plus, you'd ideally bring a powerful raid buff, and Monk's raid buff at Mythic Plus is terrible. So it's just you'd rather have anything else if it's not being covered. And tanks bring like insane like Paladin buff from a tank in dungeons is sick. Druid buff from a tank in dungeons is sick. Vengeance is sick. I feel like that definitely matters.
Yeah, and in M plus, Brewmaster basically feels like a blood DK, except the healer is pushing the death strike for you. Because they kind of just like they kind of pump into the heals, and you receive the heals really well, but you're also taking a ton of damage, and you don't have a whole lot of cooldowns to deal with M plus types of pulls. Like you just run out of shit really quick.
All right, well, what about Prop Paladin?
So this tank was OP for all of season 1, and it got nerfed big time, but it's still definitely one of the best. It's not as good as season 1, so I'd say it's like in contention with Demon Hunter for the meta tank. We don't know exactly what will be the meta tank. I feel like Demon Hunter has a higher threshold. I could be wrong, but I feel like we'll run to a wall where Prop Paladin just can't really survive the same way they can right now. The Tempered in Battle nerf is actually bigger than I think most people will see, because so Tempered in Battle is the talent they added in the 0.5 patch of season 1. It shares it's basically Spirit Link. You get Spirit linked with one player in your team. Well, you can have up to like multiple Spirit Links going out, and that like even though it kills a lot of DPS and DPS players always get mad that they're tempered in battle, it actually helps the Prop Paladin live a lot.
Yeah, I was about to
because
say
you're
that
just, like,
sounds extremely broken.
yeah, you're just Spirit linked with a DPS, and that's actually what makes Prop Paladin live extremely well right now
Yeah.
in season 1.
Dude, that
But yeah, that got
sounds
nerfed.
like something that would be absolutely horrible in raid. Tempered for battle, like I feel like you would just kill people in raid because you don't need to help survive anyone. But like in Mythic Plus, that sounds so broken, especially on some pulls.
Yeah, on some bosses too. You straight up put it on like a boomkin in some rot fight.
You put it on
where
the
tank doesn't take a lot
squishiest
of
class
damage.
in the game.
Yeah, they don't die.
How does that work?
Wait, what do you mean? No, like the boomkin will be living because you're not taking the damage. Like they're taking your health.
Yeah.
Boomkin's taking the tank's health.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
so,
I see how it works.
Yeah. You're spirit linking, right? So, but boomkin becomes unkillable. Like you can just sack one person, you can spirit link another person, and you essentially keep 2 people alive by yourself as a tank. Actually, really OP. Yeah. So, Prop Paladin, I think will always be one of the better M plus tanks, if not the best.
Kicks and a good raid
Just
buff.
because of how good they're. Yeah, like I mean, the entire class is a raid buff, right? Like you literally just you have off healing, you've got sack, bop, spell ward, lay on hands. I don't know. The class is just ridiculously good for M plus,
Yeah.
even if it's not the most highly tuned.
I mean, just always
but-
had a ton of utility. Also, you could make the argument.
Yeah.
So, do you think they nerf Paladin by a lot, but it's still in contention to be the best tank? Would you argue that that's a good way to nerf something? Did it deserve to be nerfed?
I would say so. Yeah. I mean, what I've always liked about tank meta when it's balanced is when certain tanks have strengths over other tanks. Like I'm thinking back season 2 of Shadowlands where you had Prop Paladin. Prop Paladin was a support tank. It was not as like tanky as like say Bear Tank and large pulls, but it was the tank that provided support. And then you had Bear Tank that was really good at big pulls, but outside of big pulls, it kind of sucked. It was kind of nice when tanks had their strengths and weaknesses.
Well,
And right now, it seems like, Prop Paladin is like the better support tank, but not as good.
Well, I think
Wise.
something that's really interesting is all the tanks are within 3 like tier rankings, and I don't think that's an accident because in most times where I've had you or someone else do this, the meta tank in the patch is almost always determined by whichever tank RNG high rolls the crazy fucking tier set. And then the tanks that are way lower, it's usually like basically tier sets existing and not being standardized like they are this season for tanks usually creates a much bigger gap in tanks because if you low roll and someone else high rolls, like your class sucks. And that's just not a thing this patch. So it seems like they're all just average.
Well, it kind of is a thing. Like Prop Paladins, their season 1 set is actually really good, but season 2 is like whatever. So
well, all of their
technically,
ones
Prop
are
Paladin also got
whatever.
a nerf
Oh,
in
you
their
mean
set.
yeah? So you mean
if going from
it's-
1 to 2?
Yeah, going from 1 to 2, but I'm saying imagine 1 never existed and you're purely just ranking them in 2 as if you did not just get done playing a patch. I feel like tanks are just naturally going to be closer to each other because they had the potential. Tank tier is so much more powerful than DPS and healer tier ever has been when they roll well. And no one really got that this patch. They're all mid. So because of that, all the tanks feel closer than they usually do.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, well, Demon Hunter actually has one of the better sets right now, but aside from that, yeah, they're all relatively the same.
Yeah, it's basically like whichever one, like of all the cooldowns you could proc with that tank tier set, like which one is the most impactful in the moment? It's probably meta, right?
Yeah. But yeah, like right now, I'd say most of the tanks are equally stinky.
Well, the tank Prot Warrior could be really
That's
good if it can execute the full time.
Yeah. Yeah. It looks really good.
I'm sure that'll work. You could definitely do this, especially Mythic Plus too. Just like fucking execute. All right, W. Thanks, Dork. Did you just wake up?
Maybe like almost an hour ago.
Do you have a treadmill?
No, but I actually thought about getting one of those. They're called walking
oh my
pads.
god.
Dude, everyone's been getting them recently. Like, I know Nagura has one, Jack has one, and I was like, man, this could be kind of useful, but I don't know how much I'd be using it. And also, I heard you have to like constantly grease it up, and it can smell like fucking fire. I don't know. I've heard some pretty bad reviews. On
Like
some of
it
these
can
walking
catch
pads.
on fire?
I mean, not like it may not catch on fire, but like it might smell like it. You know what I mean?
Smell like something's on
Smell like
fire?
fucking
Well, it's probably on
rubber
fire.
burning. Well, yeah, maybe there's like some contraption inside that might not be functioning.
Okay, I have to run.
But
I have to
as long as
run.
you don't blow up and die.
I have to run a bit by you. So you know the video that Jack put out on the internet where he's walking the whole time during it?
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to do that, but you don't stream yourself. You're a cat, just like usual. But like, it's obvious from the audio and the video that you are sprinting the whole time and you're exhausted and out of breath. But you never refer to why. People are just like listening to it, and the comments are like, "Why is he so out of breath?" But we'll know that you were sprinting.
I'm never exhausted.
What do you
That's
mean?
right.
Like you could just keep running and you'd never get exhausted?
Yeah, I'm cardiovascularly built diff.
Holy fuck.
Nah, I would probably get winded in like fucking 5 seconds.
Dude, holy shit. Okay. All right, cool. That sounds good. All right, thanks for the input, buddy. Remember to blow up.
Yep.
Bye-bye. All right. So we'll be doing this tomorrow. All right, calling him up.
How's it going?
Hey, so yesterday we talked about healers a little bit, but then they made some changes. And one of which you looked like you were mad about on X the Everything app.
I was very upset on X the Everything app, man. I mean, such a good platform to get all my thoughts out.
Well, what happened? What'd they do?
Okay, so short version is we run this hero talent, and it provides a special buff to our pet, and we use our pet to do healing. And it buffs, you either have like a longer cooldown pet, and that longer cooldown pet would have a shorter cooldown once you buff it with a hero talent, or you'd run the shorter cooldown pet, and the shorter cooldown pet would be a little bit stronger.
All right, hold up. I have no fucking clue what you're talking. Like, imagine I'm a total fucking idiot, and I don't even just like tell me what is different. You know?
You need to have your pet to do good healing, and you could have a 3-minute version, or you could have a 1-minute version. And the hero talent gave special buffs for both of those. They basically got rid of the special buffs.
Okay.
Pretty big nerf to that hero talent. And so instead of running the Voidweaver awesome hero talent, you are now stuck with a PvP or hero talent, which doesn't have cool animations and doesn't look sick.
Okay.
In raids. In M+, probably the same. So in raids, I don't think that you're going to like double disc. I don't think we have 5 big booms or anything like that.
Oh no, it's the only 5 big boom class. You think it's gone?
I know.
Is it getting nerfed?
I mean, it basically did, yeah.
I mean, like, is its ranking getting nerfed? We're putting in an A?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It'll be an A. It's down from 5 big booms down to A.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks
so
for
still
ranking
pretty
me there,
good.
Max.
Okay, well, there's a
Right.
couple other changes too. They buffed Resto Shaman by 4%. They buffed Holy Paladin by 4%. What are those? Are those making any changes?
I don't think so. Those can stay. We can talk about this some more if you want, though.
Oh, let's do it. I love discipline. Are you playing Oracle now?
In raids, it looks like it, yeah. So basically, there's like a lot of cooldown reduction for your spells. You fire like an insane amount of penance bolts all over the place. I don't know if you're watching my stream right now, but I can show you a little bit of it.
Oh wow, insane self-promotion. Continue.
I know. Thanks, man. You like hit a button and it gives you insane cooldown reduction, and so you have all these cool penances flying all over the place that heal and do damage at the same time, and it does a whole bunch of healing. And so you combine that. You basically combined your Covenant ability, which is like an active button you press, on top of your Pet ability, on top of extending the duration of all your atonements with another of your abilities, Evangelism. And you just smush all these things together on like minute-and-a-half cooldown timer and do fat healing.
That's hype.
Yeah, it's more work, and you can't just be like a god every 30 seconds anymore, but you're still super strong and going to be brought in Race to World first, so it's not like the spec's dead or anything.
All right, fuck yeah. All right, that's good. All right, would you like to make any other updates to what you ranked, or is everything else the same?
It was only Shaman and Paladin that were the other healers, right? I was a little busy.
Yeah, only those two, but they're still in D in Walmart.
Yeah, I think they could probably stay there.
All right,
at
fuck
least
yeah.
from like a world first tie-in perspective kind of deal. Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. Why are you not walking right now?
Well, I can only do two things at once, so I can talk to you and then
I tuned into your stream before I called you and you weren't walking.
Yeah, because I'm doing it at Plus Dungeon and talking to chat. Now I'm not talking to them.
Oh, okay.
So I can talk to you and then game, or I can talk to you and walk.
Okay. No, I mean that makes sense. I didn't know it was like that. Shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, when I said that, it kind of sounded like I was
yeah.
stalking you. I wasn't trying to like get you. I got you there. Or anything.
No. You were just, you're just giving me
Well, it
awesome
was.
self promo, checking out the stream.
Yeah, W. All right, everyone, make sure to check out Automaticjak. All right, cool. Thanks, buddy. Remember to blow
Thank
up.
you, dude.
All right. So healers are the same, except now we are. All right. Do you guys think there's any DPS class that's 5 big booms? Do you think there's anything in the game that's a 5 big boom tier? Ooh, we have some guessers. Well, we have some people thinking Fire Mage. Got some Windwalker enjoyers. All right, well, I mean, let's just get started then. Let's just get started and call one of the OGs. All right, fuck it. Starting with DK, boys. Calling Taeznak. Hello?
What's up, Max?
Hey, long time no talk. What have you been up to recently?
Just a lot of work. 11.1's been a wild ride, man.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, so are you still like super in tune with DKs and stuff? Are you in the knowledge? All right, beautiful. So I kind of want to just ask some general things. Like DK's been brought a lot recently, but going into this patch, are there any like major changes? Does Frost still play generally the same? Actually, we can just start with Frost or Unholy. Which one do you want to go on first?
We can start with Frost, yeah. You already started with it.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so Frost just got some buffs today. It was like kind of a wild ride between like how Breath played last patch and then now. There's some movement up and down. They were like this crazy cleave class. They had great 2-target, really good single target. They were proportionally just DKs in general were insane for Ansarek just because the movement stuff. Like what do you see going into this patch? Like do you think Frost is still good at the same things? Do you think it still has a niche for the same kind of things, or do you think it's fallen off a little? Like where do you think Frost is at right now?
It's a little bit hard to say because this raid is like, it's really unfriendly to melee just because how much movement there is, how many mechanics push you out of melee range, and Frost like really strives on being able to stick to its targets. So it kind of holds it back potentially. I still do think it has its strengths in those low target cleave scenarios, even moderate AoE. It can do really well, especially with the tier set popping off free frost eyes for you too. It's honestly really good. I'm just unsure with the movement. That's the only thing that might hold it back here.
Okay. I do want to point out just one thing for you and everyone else, though, and I'm not saying that you don't know this and haven't already thought of it, but I want to say leaving every testing cycle, there's always so many major melee concerns. People are like, there's no uptime, and it's based on like a few testing things. And while there are bosses that are definitely less melee friendly in this raid, that at least it seems that way from testing, it's always so much better in practice with like a good strat and stuff like that, to where like I can't remember the last time we actually fought a boss in Mythic where like melee are just sitting there doing nothing and it's like terrible for melee. Like it's actually been years for a boss actually going live like that. So at least me personally, whenever I get close to thinking that that's true, I'm like, I'm gonna let the game prove that to me rather than like going with that kind of hesitation. But Okay, so Frost is like that. Frost was in Mythic Plus meta last season, right? For at least a decent amount of it, which I think is that the first time Frost DK's ever been in like meta high level Mythic Plus?
It was in BFA as well the last season with Ice Cap, the Ice Cap Frost Scythe build.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's been a long time.
All right, and then so my question would be, do you think it's in the Mythic Plus meta in this upcoming season?
Honestly, probably. It's got some stiff competition, especially with like Demo and its new tier set. It's got some dangerous competition, but its tier set really leans into its AoE preference, as well as providing good single target benefits, and even some new builds people can play with that this tier set enables. So
Okay.
there's a solid chance it could be.
Okay, and there's another element I think too, and I'm not saying this is true or not true, but a lot of people seem to be on the wave right now that Aug might be dead in Mythic Plus. And if that's true, it's opening up, you know, like 1/3 of total DPS. There's going to be 50% more DPS spots on a top level key if Aug is gone, right? So you have a lot more potential for every single class that's really good to have a chance to get in, if that ends up being true. Although I think most people are probably pretty hesitant. They've heard Aug is dead multiple times before that's actually been true. So, okay, so potentially Mythic Plus meta, how many Frost DKs do you think are in the Raced World First comp of Gallywix?
That's tough. I'm going to say 1.
Okay, so you're confident about that. You're like, okay, so we're probably playing Frost, and that DK is good enough to where you think you'll see one in the race.
I'm not 100% on that because the lack of grips in this raid is honestly really concerning. If Gallywix doesn't have grips and there's no reason to bring up Blood DK, or there's no reason you need like Gorfiends or something like that, Frost might be a decent slot in there. Still think there might be a preference towards Blood unless there's just no other, unless there's no reason to bring Blood, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a scenario where, I mean, everyone acknowledges that, like, Blood DKs are way better at gripping in general as Frost and Unholy, but there are fight designs where Unholy and Frost can grip just as well as Blood. And it's due to the infrequency and the total amount of ads and then, like, the non-need for, like, specifically mass grip where A-bombs is fine. And in that case, it can do it, and then it's just whether, you know, tanks need to cover a raid buff and then DKs are, like, really well-tuned or something. But, okay, yeah. So,
exactly, yeah.
Okay, so where would you end up putting Frost?
Probably like mid B tier.
Okay, I'll remember to keep it mid later. All right, on to Unholy then. So Unholy's gone through a ton of changes as well. Like this, from the beginning of this expansion, they were like more cooldown reduction based on active play, and then they just kind of synchronized all the cooldowns to just kind of work without that, kind of similar to what they did with Disc and a few other classes. Now that going into this tier, a lot of good 2-target and stuff. What is Unholy looking like? Like, how does Unholy play in this upcoming raid?
It's really awkward because Unholy's in this weird spot where its baseline is tuned like insanely high. We're going to be walking into the patch next week doing just 20% more damage than we were last week, just from all the baseline buffs we've got.
Interesting.
But its tier set is also just really, really bad. We're talking like you probably won't replace your season 1 tier set till you have like 20 item levels up for your season 2 tier set. It's real bad. So it scales pretty bad. It's at this awkward spot where like it has the potential to do really good 2-target cleave once it's got its new tier set at a high enough item level, and it's got a lot of really good movement potential, ability to do stuff from range unlike most melee. So I'm really torn on Unholy. It's got some benefits but also a lot of downfalls right now.
Is that tier set problem an issue with last tier's season 1's tier set being insanely fucking good, or is it the new one being really bad?
New one's really bad.
Okay.
Last season 1 tier set's like 8%.
Okay, I will say historically, Blizzard does not usually let tier sets, like if your old one was only 8%, like the idea that the new one would be so bad that it's not buffed is kind of insane. That sounds like something that they would do once people start getting tier sets. It may not be before the race, but it'll be like sometime early in the patch. Like they people have weaker tier sets compared to other people, but it being that weak is like historically not, that doesn't usually happen.
Yeah, but yeah, if the tier sets buff to a reasonable spot, I think Unholy's got a really good chance. But right now we don't have that, so I think I don't know, man. It's lacking in a lot of places where I think Frost excels. Only thing that Unholy does better is being able to, be a melee and do most of its rotation from range, being able to play riders. So yeah, I'm torn on Unholy, man.
Okay, so we're torn. So I'm assuming you don't think it's in the Race World First or Mythic Plus comp then?
Probably
Currently.
not, no.
Okay, so where would you rank it?
Low C tier.
Low C. Okay. Dude, chat's thinking I won't remember. I will remember to reorder these things. But also, when people start ranking later, they naturally will just have more context than you will. You usually go early in these, and then that
Yeah.
is unfortunate because like people ranking later just definitely have so much more context to go off of. You're kind of setting the optimism for everybody else. Okay.
Usually I'm way more optimistic than I am right now, too.
Oh, I have one thing. If you could change anything about DPS DK's overall class, what is it? Like if you could just ask just one change for DKs, what would it be?
Equalize utility between DPS and blood. Like the
That's a good
HP
answer.
nerfs we're getting in 11.1, it increases the range between Blood's AMZ and DPS Death Knight's AMZ as well. They have better grips, they have lower grip cooldown. Like there's so much in favor of blood right now. It's suffocating to DPS DK when we're trying to get into a comp.
Okay. Love to hear it. All right, thank you, Taeznak.
Yep, no problem.
Yep, love you, bye. Get smoked. All right, I did want to mention one more thing before we make another call as well. Is I feel like a lot of times we talk about like how this tier list is about like just talking about what's cool about these classes and to like not take the ranking too seriously. That is not true. Today you will find out what the best classes are in next patch objectively. If your class is in like B, C, or D, or Walmart, it fucking sucks. If it's an A, it's all right, and if it's in 5 big booms, it's pretty good. And you should make your main next patch based on what this list tells you. All right. I'm gonna call someone else. Let's see. We got Jedith. We could do Havoc. Let's fucking do that. See if he answers. He's not answering. Might have to call. Oh, he's here. Hello.
Yo,
Hello. Are you prepared to talk about Havoc Demon Hunter today?
I am prepared. What do you want to know?
Okay. So I want to know a few things, but I know Havoc's in like a little bit different spot gameplay wise, I think, than season 1, right?
Yeah. So we're using the other hero talent tree, Eldraki Reaver, which, a lot of people don't like it. It's not a very popular choice, but it is just doing the most damage this time. And Felsguard got pretty nerfed, so this is where we've landed this time. So yeah, the gameplay is definitely a little bit different. We're not lining up as many little buff windows and trying to spend our demon surges. Now it's all about like, throw glaive and using Reaver's glaive. And then we have the new Wounded Quarry thing, which is kind of like the elephant in the room that we can talk about if you want.
Is that the funnel? Yeah, I would definitely talk about that because I think them introducing a funnel element to a class that hasn't had it when they've been kind of removing niches like things like multi-dotting and funnel, things that certain classes did way better than everyone else. For the past like 4 or 5 years, they've been removing and not letting those things shine, and them adding it into the game is really fascinating. So yeah, definitely talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited to hear that we got something like that because I feel like Havoc has sort of been missing its like niche and like something unique that it brings to a group comp, because as the years have gone by, it just feels like every other class does what Havoc does, but they do it better. So to have funnel is pretty cool. It's still up in the air of how good it is actually going to be because it did get nerfed last night.
Okay.
But I think the nerf is warranted and it needed to happen because it was at a level where it was essentially game breaking. Like if it stayed that way, you would be approaching Mythic Plus in a completely different way. You'd be pulling a ton of trash onto bosses and just like blowing bosses.
That's what you
up.
used
So-
to. You used to do that with Sub Rogue back in the day. You would just always.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think Mythic Plus kind of works like that anyway. Like if you think about most Mythic Plus pulls now, you want to be pulling a bunch of mobs together, yes, but you usually want a big mob that you are focusing down in every pull if you can. Then that's not even a funnel thing. That's just like even classes that are AoEing off of one target, you're going to be doing more damage to that one target, right? So like, I feel like it wouldn't have to change too much.
But yeah, it did get nerfed. It's probably about a 50% nerf, but just on Wounded Quarry. So all the sims that we've been doing so far were single target sims, and we didn't account for the Wounded Quarry buff in those sims. So in terms of like comparing classes to each other and seeing where Havoc stands, nothing has changed there. So yeah, I think we're doing pretty good.
Okay. Do you think Havoc Demon Hunter will be in the Mythic Plus meta for the first time in a very long time? Keep in mind before you answer that if AUG is actually out of Mythic Plus, there's an entire extra spot in the top group available that there wasn't for basically the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's like going to be a big factor in making this decision because we do have Chaos Brand, even though it got nerfed from 5% to 3%. It's still pretty significant for like fire mages or whatever you're bringing in. The fact that we have funnel now, if the funnel is still as good as we think it is, I absolutely think we'll be part of the Mythic Plus meta.
Well, and also I think one other thing too is it kind of depends on whether you're playing a Prop Paladin or a Vengeance Demon Hunter. Like, if you're playing a Vengeance Demon Hunter, it significantly reduces the likelihood you play a Havoc, right?
For sure. But well, yeah, I don't know. Prop Paladin wasn't great at the start of season 1, and then just over time it turned out to be the best.
You know, that's kind of an interesting thought. In Raid, you usually think of tanks the other way around. You're like, we're going to bring the tank that you wouldn't want to bring for DPS. Is it the same in Mythic Plus? I was thinking you would be less likely to play Havoc if you're playing Vengeance, but would it actually be you're less likely to play Vengeance if you're playing a Havoc?
Potentially. I don't know. It's hard to say because tanks are super important.
Yeah,
And
I feel like
if one
tanks
is
are
just,
way
like,
more
way
important in
better than
Mythic
the
Plus.
other-
I think tank
Yeah.
probably has prio.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, and how many Havoc Demon Hunters do you think are in the Race World first kill of Gallywix?
At least one. Probably max 2. But definitely at least one, especially with the funnel. Like the funnel is going to be very, very good in raid because a lot of the bosses have ads that come out in waves, and you can use that to your advantage.
Okay. All right, sure. So where would you end up ranking Havoc then?
So here's the thing: if you asked me this yesterday, I probably would have said Havoc was up there with Big Justice and the Rizzler. But now I think it's safe to say we're like
Okay. Top, middle, or bottom of A?
top. Let's go top.
Beautiful. Okay. So almost 5 big booms for Havoc. Although, like, that was based on a bug too, though, you know, and like they're definitely
it
going
was.
to fix that bug, but okay, that's fine.
Yeah. There was a lot of people like dooming when we got this bug fix last night, but I think people sometimes, you know.
Are you about to say that people sometimes overreact to changes? Because that's an insanely obvious thing.
No, I think people misunderstand the difference between a bug fix and a nerf. That's it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, they can be the same thing, but also the intention is different. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right, W. Thank you for your time.
All right,
Yeah,
bye,
love you. Bye. Fuck. He said it before me. Okay. Alrighty. Oh, I was gonna ask him if he would want to make any changes to Havoc Demon Hunter. What would he do? I'll ask him that. Sorry, I forgot. I'm calling him again. Okay, he's just not answering me. That's insane. Is he gonna ghost me after that? That would be such a fucking power move. Oh my god. I think he's doing it. Oh my fucking god. Okay, I have to end the call. I can't. The longer I sit on the call, the more of a power move it is. Holy fucking shit. Okay. What do you guys want to do next? Holy moly, I just got destroyed. Warrior? All right, let's do Warrior. Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I haven't spoken to you in a while. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Not bad. Okay. So a couple things about Warrior. We just got done with them being like Fury. Actually, wait. Can you tell me like what kind of spiritual experience you went through last patch with how specifically strong Warrior was for exactly the raid fights? Like I tell this to my chat all the time because they're like, what's the meta this tier? And I'm like, the meta could be the same. Like the class balance could be exactly the same from tier to tier, but what classes are good could be totally dependent on what the fights are asking of you or if your class is specifically good for the fights. And I feel like Fury Warrior had just the best timings ever and the bosses needed you to do burst AoE at exactly the right time for Warrior. And you guys caught a bunch of extra nerfs, which like hurt you in Mythic Plus and some other areas because of that. What was your experience going through that?
Yeah, it was awful, right? Because it was obviously way too good at doing instant AoE burst that nobody could sort of keep up with. I don't know, Brood Twister, Rashanan, Ansurek. Those are the three bosses that really got Fury nerfed really badly over and over and over.
Yeah. I mean, they were still like, I remember people were complaining. They were like, okay, Warriors are complaining about being nerfed, opens up Warcraft Logs All-Stars, and they're still like number one on every AoE fight. But like, I feel like it still was like, it was like Shadow Priest in Season 2 Mythic Plus. Like, Shadow Priest wasn't actually that good at Season 2 Mythic Plus. It's just every single dungeon required Mass Dispel and Mind Soothe way more than normal. And like, they were basically getting their damage nerfed because of their utility. And that kind of, it feels like you guys were getting all of your damage nerfed because you were specifically good at one thing that all of the fights needed you to do.
Yeah. Our consistent AoE sucked ass ever since. They did kind of buff Mountain Thane up, which helped our consistent AoE in M+, but we're still kind of bad.
Okay.
But yeah, they did rework stuff for next season. I mean, one of our tools to do instant AoE burst are gone now, so it shouldn't be the case anymore. If we do get similar raid bosses, but I haven't actually done any raid testing, so I don't know what the bosses look like. I don't think
you know what. Before you say anything
though.
else, I think melee often. I think the fact that you haven't done raid testing, that means you're going to go into every raid and be like, okay, I think my class is going to be good or bad if this is just a normal raid. So it has like a little bit of like, there's like one pure single target boss. There's some bosses with some cleave. There's some bosses with burst AoE, and then you would be right because every raid ends up being that way. And usually melee end up tricking themselves in PTR into thinking that melee sucks. And it literally has not been bad in almost 5 years for a single raid. So I think you might, by not doing PTR, you might actually have a better idea of how your class is going to go into a raid rather than studying it. For
Yeah,
most people.
I mean, do you? Okay, so I'm gonna think about ranking arms here, right? And it depends on your answer here.
Well, don't.
Are there
Okay,
any-
you can ask me a question.
Okay. Are there any bosses with like high emphasis on execute?
So I'll answer your question more specifically. So there are 2 bosses in this raid, and they are the last 2 bosses we've tested are in the raid because you don't test the last boss. They are the 3rd to last boss and the 2nd to last boss, and both of them have dedicated execute phases. And what that means is the damage you do in the fight before the execute phase doesn't matter for the damage phase execute check. So you are in both of those fights back to back. You are entering a fight at 40 or 30%, and then you have a certain amount of time to kill the boss, and it's just on a timer as soon as the execute phase starts. That is the first boss. Each one of those bosses are the first ones that have been like that. Like every other execute fight, the damage you do before execute phase lowers the damage check in execute phase, right? These are purely execute phase. Like it starts and ends in execute, and they're back to back, and both of them would be the first 2 bosses in multiple years where that's the case. So the answer is yes, and extremely yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We're ranking based on performance here, right? Nothing about design.
Yeah, purely performance. Yeah, and people are gonna
Okay.
pick their classes based off of this, and it's objectively correct.
Put arms in the top tier.
5 big booms. Holy fuck! Do you like the Costco guys, by the way?
What?
Never mind. Just literally erase from your memory that I just asked you that. Okay. Okay. So arms is there. What do you think about arms and Mythic Plus though, or is it kind of more raid specifically?
For Mythic Plus, I do think arms is gonna do better in season 2 than it did in season 1. I don't think it's gonna be meta, but I think it's gonna be like, I don't know, probably A tier in M+.
Okay.
Just because of his damage. He hasn't really gained much except for 10% free stamina, I guess, and more damage. They did do some really weird buffs for arms and fury. I want to mention that. Where they literally just buffed our main rotational abilities to the moon, and then just left. That kind of just means that non-rotational abilities just kind of feel weak in comparison to now.
Okay.
So like our capstones are devalued because of that, and like you'll pick like the stat nodes in the tree
that's
instead
weird.
of the the capstones and all that stuff. So it's like arms is gonna do that.
Oh, okay. So where do you think Fury ends up landing?
Fury, I'm gonna put high A tier.
Woo!
For M+, I think Fury is going to be probably worse than arms in the overall damage department. We are still hard capped to 5 targets, and all of our damage pretty much comes from main rotational abilities. So yeah.
All right, great.
I would like them to buff some of our non-capped abilities at some point. But,
Okay, I was going to
guess that's not
ask
happening this year.
specifically. You can make, you're a Blizzard developer right now. You can make one change to Warrior. What is it?
Meat Cleaver, 8 targets.
Meat Cleaver 8 targets. It's not like make Rallying Cry worth something again.
That also, please.
So
In 5
2.
in 5-man groups, please. Like.
Oh, so
10%.
true, so true. We should actually take some time to talk about that. They buffed so many like raid-wide cooldowns to be specifically better at Mythic Plus, and all of them made sense. And it makes no sense that Rally is a 10% HP increase in a 5-man. It is completely worthless. It's borderline worthless in raid, to be honest with you. And that means in dungeons it should be way better. So, all right, fuck yeah, love hearing that. All right, thank you. Go back to your keys. I'm sorry for bothering you.
That's okay.
Yep,
And
good.
You know what else I love?
What did he said, sorry, I just got so flustered. He said, I don't know what just happened to me. That was terrifying. Okay. Let's go to, he said I also love, but he didn't say you. Dude, I'm getting absolutely, or he said, you know what else I love? Oh, dude, I didn't even hear that. Sorry. He got my heart moving so fast. I didn't know what to do. I just fucking ended the call. I don't know what to say. Okay. All right, let's get Hunter out of the way. God, I fucking hate hunters. Don't tell this guy that. Fucking hate them all. All right, calling him up. Hello?
Yo.
Hey. What's up?
I'm pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. How have you handled this spiritual journey of Hunter reworking this patch?
Oh, I mean, it's there's lots to write and to argue on the class discords about, which is obviously the most productive way to spend your time. So it's been great.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love that? What spec do you want to start with?
Let's save the best for last, and so we BM last. Let's start with MM because it received the biggest.
Yeah, huge changes.
Yeah, well, huge on paper, but in my estimation, well, I mean, I think that's just an objective fact, really, that the structure of the gameplay and how it feels hasn't changed that much. in the few parts it has changed, I'd say it has improved in that there are more mechanics that you're engaging with. And I think generally, outside of True Shot at least, the spec got like what feels like a 10 to 20% speed bump. Like it just feels like you're playing the same thing as before, but with 10 to 20% more haste. And it's a little bit more engaging in terms of the mechanics you're interacting with.
Okay. I mean, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Going faster is fun.
Yeah.
Like I remember
Yeah,
in
I
the
think-
corruption season, everyone's fun wasn't built the same. Like if you had like haste corruption or you're playing ineffable truth, like your class was just quicker, therefore it was like way more fun to play. Or maybe some crit
Yeah.
ones gave up time. Like I feel like adding haste to your spec just adds fun in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I think my take on MM is probably a little bit more positive than the average. I didn't hate how it was before. It was certainly a bit simplistic. It has gotten a little bit more in that regard. But I think when people saw the MM rework, they were hoping for more of a substantive change in gameplay and feel than we actually got. Like, it's
Do you think it
incredible
needed that
the-
though?
I think it needed something because it was like really stagnant. It was like it's
Okay.
basically been the same thing since BFA when they did like the actual big rework. The thing is, it hasn't changed that much. It has just sped up a little bit. That's sort of how it feels. So considering the size of the list of changes, when you look at it and you're sort of like, oh yeah, this is like a whole new fucking spec, and then you actually play it and it's like, no, it's not. Like the distribution of damaging abilities in your overall is substantially different in some cases, but the way you actually play is 85 to 92% the same.
That's so specific. But okay.
Yeah, that's because I was debating with myself between those figures.
All right, I like that. That's fine. So it's exactly 85 to 92% different. Okay, so do you think MM Hunter is actually, when was the last time Hunter was really good in Mythic Plus, like for like a whole season, Mythic Plus season?
For a whole, that would be like the heyday everyone now talks about, what Shadowlands Season 3 and Season 4 with Survival.
But like, what about MM and
Yeah.
like BM though, like ranged Hunter?
I mean, it was quite good in Shadowlands Season 1 was MM, but I wouldn't necessarily say meta. I think it got some really top keys. And before that, I think then we're looking back to like middle season, middle BFA.
Yeah, because there was an
recall if it was
MDI
season 2 or 3.
season where you played triple Hunter, but I think that might have been MDI
Yeah.
and not live keys.
Yeah, so it was very well suited to MDI that season, but also on push keys. If you could keep them alive, like there were some really high-end double Hunter teams, double BM Hunter, and I played quite a bit of that in BFA as well. So yeah, that was probably the last ranged Hunter heyday in Mythic Plus in my estimation.
Okay, and then how many MM Hunters do you think are in the Race to World First Kill of Gallywix?
Oh, the race. Okay. I mean, as it stands now, I'm probably thinking 0, but that's also because I know that Malakas hates playing anything but VM. So.
Oh, W calling the win too. Oh my god, I fucking love that. Okay, so, all right, so where would you end up ranking MM then?
I think so. Single target is going to be like okay. MM is really good in AOE, burst AOE. It always has been, but the thing is they screwed up its AOE. It used to have an 8 target AOE cap with a talent. They got rid of that talent, so now it caps out, like hard caps at 6 targets.
Okay.
And that's just not versatile enough. Like, it's really good within that 3 to 6 target range. It got some 2 target cleave as well that a lot of people are excited about. But the thing is, you have to trade out your ability to do 3 plus target AoE just to be able to do any 2 target. So
Yeah, it sounds like something that would work really well for raid fights, but it sounds super annoying in Mythic Plus.
yeah, one particular, like if you have a pure 2 target fight or something similar, I don't know, Silken Court, Forgotten Experiments, those kind of fights, great. Anything else, completely worthless.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put it a B tier because it's just not versatile enough. It still seems worse than BM pure single target, and we know BM is on the easier side to play. I mean, MM is not that hard, but compared to BM, it is harder.
Yeah.
So yeah, I put it a B tier. Yeah, mid to low B tier.
Okay, and did Survival get any changes going into this patch?
Yeah, quite they changed one key thing, which is that previously, thanks to a really powerful Merciless Blows talent, Butchery, which is this AoE ability that sort of, very iconic AoE ability. It was like a super sick single target button. And I think a lot of people like that. I thought that thematically was kind of silly, but obviously Survival, like right now on live service, really, really strong spec, especially in the raid. Like it's one of the strongest DPS specs for Mythic Queen Ansarak. So in fixing that, they basically took Butchery, which is the iconic AoE ability, and Flanking Strike, which is an iconic single-target ability for survival, and they made them mutually exclusive. And unfortunately, the side effect of this has been that survival has lost one of its biggest strengths historically, which is that due to its Wildfire Bomb being such a key ability for like both single target and AoE, it always had pretty good AoE damage in its single target build and single target damage in its AoE build. But now that they've split basically the whole talent tree down the middle, where you have to commit to either Flanking Strike, super good single target, or Butchery, super good AoE, you are now in a situation where if you want decent AoE, you sacrifice a ton of a single target now.
Yeah.
And what used to be a relative strength of survival, especially compared to the other hunter specs, has now become a bit of a weakness.
Yeah. I mean, that's also just a weakness for all classes.
So
Like,
that
if you
kind
are...
of sucks
oh,
a bit.
shit.
And then when you just look at the raw numbers, like let's say
Shadow's
you go for
fucking
all the AoE
muted.
stuff,
Fuck.
it has the worst AoE of the 300 specs. The single target is quite good, a bit better than MM, but obviously it has a little bit of a melee tax, right, in terms of its ability to fully exercise its potential. It's not quite as simplistic to play as BM. And obviously the AoE is way worse in every single way in terms of Mythic Plus. So I think I was kind of debating with myself between B and C tier. I just think MM is insane at 3 to 6 target AoE, so it has that niche. It's not the best niche you can
I
have
feel
in
like,
this game.
dude, I feel like any class that in PvE now that this is true, what you said is true, that you can spend a ton of talent points or a ton of effort into being really good at AoE and single target or cleave, and they don't happen at the same time, your class is fucking cooked, man. Like, you can't compete because there are simply classes that are doing both at the same time, and that's tough. You know, it sucks.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put Survival Hunter in C tier.
So
Yeah,
you
one
don't
thing I
think?
just
Do
wanted
you
to
think
touch
there's
on-
any
yeah.
survival hunters in the Mythic Plus meta or Race World First comp?
I would be very shocked to see that in current tuning. Anything can happen and all that, but right now I just don't see it.
Okay.
All
All right, let's talk about the Big Daddy
To
BM.
hit on.
Okay.
Yeah, just real quick on MM
Sure.
survival, like Blizzard needs to hear. Probably, and it's also true for BM really. The hero talents are completely unbalanced right now. Each spec has one hero talent that's playable and one that's like 10, 20, 30% behind in every situation. Like
Wow.
no silver linings whatsoever. But that'll be even more true for BM as we get to in a moment. But yeah, let's talk about BM. So BM had had probably its most boring hero talent reworked. It's really powerful now. It's still pretty boring. But obviously,
Is that Dark Ranger?
It is Pack Leader.
Oh,
So
Pack
Dark
Leader,
Ranger
yeah,
used
I
to be the
remember that.
one that changed the gameplay, and I think most people kind of like Dark Ranger. But Pack Leader was always this kind of like, it makes you do everything you normally do as like a baseline BM hunter a little bit better. It's still similar to that. It spawns more pets and a variety of pets and all that stuff. And what has been driving a lot of BM's insane power that everyone has been seeing on the PTR lately has been a lot of beneficial interactions with those pets and our kit, and also a relatively powerful tier set bonus. Now, some of your audience may know that BM copped like an 8% nerf yesterday or this morning.
Yeah.
At least that was probably partly justified. It was looking like people were talking about BM Hunter, Mythic Plus meta, and its single target was great. So before today, I would probably have said, I mean, why not bring 2 free BM Hunters to World First, maybe? Now, I still think it's really good. Like, it just tells you how OP the spec was before, that it can cop an 8% nerf, and I'll still call it really good. I'll call it A tier. Now, in terms of just raw, besides just raw power, its gameplay is broadly similar. So it's still basically a 2.5 button spec with kill command and barb shots.
It'll always
There's a
be
little
that
bit-
way. I think that's very intentional.
I think so too. If you are coming back to it or whatever, don't be worried about learning a bunch of new stuff. It's pretty much the same thing. The APM keeps going up. It feels like, at least. So you might want to, it can hurt your hands to play for long periods in some cases. But plays broadly the same. There are some extra nuances and everything that the number crunchers have been working out. But if you can press kill command and barb shot a lot with 2 fingers on your left hand, then you'll be pretty golden and you'll do lots of damage. A tier for BM.
Okay, A tier. Beautiful. If you're a Blizzard developer and you can make any change for Hunter, but it has to only be one, the most important change, what is it?
Oh, it's very easy. So Hunter needs a raid buff that's worth bringing in that's actually worth something in Mythic Plus because it has Hunter's Mark. Hunter's Mark probably like 90 to 95% of the time gets Hunter a raid spot, but like if you have a Silken Cord, for example, where because there are 2 bosses and they share health, and you can only Hunter's Mark one of them, you just cuts the power of your raid buff in half. In Mythic Plus, AoE, where there's anywhere from 1 to 15 targets, it's basically a nothing burger. Just a really strange disconnect between Mythic Plus power and raid power of that debuff. Hunter has so many crit related mechanics, like it has a class 3 talent that makes it gets more crit from all sources. Every spec has some mechanic that basically just is a damage rider off of your crits. Why doesn't Hunter just get a 2 to 3% raid wide crit buff like Shaman got for mastery, like Druid has for versatility? I think that's the most obvious one because it would do so, because Hunter's Mythic Plus representation relative to its overall representation is
Very
really
low.
bad. Like it has to be some of the worst in the game because it's not. There are some specs that don't see a lot of play in Mythic Plus. I'm not going to pretend that Hunter is the only one with this problem, but like Hunter is one of the most popular classes in the game. I mean, it's like what?
It's way up there. Yeah,
first, second, third,
it's one
depending on what you look at,
or 1 through 3. Yeah, one of those.
Yeah, but it's nearly always like bottom 5 classes for Mythic Plus representation. That means there are lots of people who enjoy playing Hunter but feel they cannot participate effectively in anything resembling competitive Mythic Plus unless you run into like a Goldilocks where you just happen to be overtuned. But that has only happened like, you know, 2
couple
seasons.
times. It's very rare for that to happen in your
many
class.
years.
Plus, also this
Exactly.
this season, I think the Hunter raid buff has a chance to get changed because as soon as it was announced, people are like, well, why don't you add some value in execute and some at the beginning, so it's at least good for both. So this raid, as I was just talking about with Critcake, is there's 2 bosses that have like phases, execute phases that the second they start, they just have a hard timer for them, and technically the damage you do before that point doesn't contribute to the overall timer. There is some like weird enrage stuff where that could happen, but generally speaking, it's like, can you do enough damage in execute? If it's not hard to get to execute, you could actually see a scenario where if hunters are not tuned really well or not actually good for the execute phase, you actually could sit hunter for those fights just because their raid buff doesn't do anything in the hardest part of the fight, right? So if that happens this raid, not saying hunter should want that to happen, but if that does happen, I think it would make Blizzard rethink the way the hunter raid buff interacts with you. So hopefully,
I mean, I hope so. But the thing is, even if they give it execute or they spread it over the entire HP, if boss takes 1% more damage or whatever, it still doesn't fix the fact that, you know, it's only a single target and you have to commit a GCD to swapping it if you want to do so mid-fight, which just automatically makes it almost worthless for Mythic Plus, right? For like no obvious reason that I can see, because it's not like Hunter brings a lot of other super powerful group utility. There are other kinds of group utility that Hunter could use for sure. I mean, I could go on and on about that, but I think, you know, a universally useful raid group buff, whether it's 2 to 3% crit for the whole party, or it's like you give it the same as what, like a battle shout equivalent, something like that. I think Hunter could really use. I think that would definitely be top of my list if I could get into the code.
Okay, beautiful. All right, sounds good. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
Yep, love you, bye. Smoked. All my auras back. All right, let's do Enhanced Shaman. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, holy shit, you're so loud. Yeah, one second, let me turn you down. Okay, we're good. So Enhance has been absolutely fucking piss broken for like 3 or 4 years now. Actually, I don't know if that's true. They've been brought for that long, but I think it's only been recently where they've just been obscenely broken. First of all, you happy about that? Are you happy about your time in the sun?
I feel like no matter what I say for this whole segment, someone's gonna have my head for it. So
okay,
I'll just like go no matter what.
Fuck yeah.
So it's since Sepulchre that it's been really good, and I'd say all of Dragonflight, especially in raids, it was really good. This season, I think it's pretty obvious, even though the enhanced players don't want me to say it, it's been pretty overpowered.
Wait, in season 1?
In season 1 of WoW.
Yeah, what do you mean enhanced players don't want you to say that? The whole like, okay, here's I gotta get something off my chest. The whole like, guys, don't talk about how good our class is, or in the final level of that is like, and I wonder if people still do this, where like there will be a raid testing where it's like they're retesting a couple easy bosses and people are like, oh, they're retesting because they want to see what tuning looks like. And then people will tell people to sandbag, like, hey guys, if you're an enhanced shaman, if you're a mage, whatever, like, we're going to sandbag this testing. Just go in and play bad, as if like that has ever mattered or anyone ever has like noticed that. Like trying to vocally say your class isn't good when it obviously is complete bullshit. Like no one is tricked by that. Blizzard, nobody. Like It's insane. Like saying
I 100% agree.
Yeah,
It's really annoying. Like the whole keep it quiet, keep it shush. Like it's obvious to admit the spec has spent the whole of the season really good. I gassed Stormbringer before the expansion. I said it was really good. It was even more broken than I expected. They made it more broken in the follow-up patch. So yeah, like they've obviously done a really good job. The spec in terms of numbers, I think its design is really good as well. So I think it's been a good expansion, but I can understand why other people are kind of annoyed that there's so much attention being given to one spec. Like I get it because we've been in the other position.
Yeah, and they've just been they were so good and they were so fun. And it seems like every patch, Blizzard developers are like, you know what we need to do? We need to make Enhanced better and more fun. So like Enhanced players are like, this is fucking sick. Fuck yeah, let's keep doing this. But other classes are like, where's my attention? Even though that's not quite how that works. But okay, so Enhanced banger in season 1. Moved around your hero talents a little bit, especially going into season 2. What are, I would say just in general, like what is the difference gameplay wise going into season 2 versus season 1?
So I can't believe this sentence is coming out of my mouth after the before the expansion situation.
Yeah.
Totemic fucking owns. It's really fun. It does really good AoE. It's cool. So like that's a huge upgrade. They basically revamped the hero tree that I thought was the worst hero tree they've ever done. And they didn't break Stormbringer in the process. You've got 2 sick hero talents that both play well in single target and AoE. They've both got their own specialties and different cooldown timers. One can do priority damage, the other one can do burst AoE.
Mm-hmm.
They both play really different, and they focus on different abilities. So it's like there's like not enough gassing of the way that they've done the spec, this expansion. I could do like whoever designed it should be really proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I can really say on it. Like I think this season they've done even more of a good job than they'd already done.
Okay, beautiful. Do you think Enhance is in the Mythic Plus meta this season?
I'd rather be wrong in like the direction of saying it will be and it's not than the other way. So I think like what it does, I would be surprised if it's not at least considered, but I'm pretty sure it will be. Just because the flexibility of being able to swap between like a 30-second burst AoE profile or a priority damage one with 2 minutes or anything like that, being able to do that on one spec.
Yeah, it's really good.
Means that you have to like, and that you don't really give up any AoE to do single target and vice versa.
There are
It's hard
classes
to fully kill a spec that can do that.
I mean, there are classes that have multiple DPS specs within their class that don't have the range that Enhance can have between just their 2 hero talents. So that's,
yeah.
I mean, it's insane. So it's very, very good. Yeah, W Enhance. All right, so you'd think probably in the Mythic Plus meta, but that's always something that kind of develops over a patch anyway. What about Race World First? How many Enhanced Shamans do you think are in the Race World First comp?
I think, well, based on the raid testing that I had, there's a couple of fights that are really annoying with Hot Hand, but it doesn't matter because you can just play Stormbringer instead. I think there's going to be at least one, I feel like, unless it can't live. I don't want to say higher because class stacking is kind of weird, but it's not like out of the realm of possibility.
Well,
Like,
what
that
chat
there's
was saying
more.
today, and again, every time chat has said Og is dead, they were wrong. But chat was really thinking Og is dead today. And if that's true, this preconceived notion, which has been true, that like there's with how many raid buffs there are, you can't really stack a raid comp. If you remove 2 let's say Og is actually dead. If you remove 2 classes from that raid comp, class stacking becomes significantly more possible, especially because you're not removing total classes from the raid as much as you're literally removing DPS classes that are required. So your DPS stackability gets way fucking higher. So potentially useful information.
Like as it stands now, yeah. If I look at, I'm kind of like looking at where other people have ranked it and trying to gauge where we'd go. But with the damage that it does and that it can swap around how it does the damage, I could see it being stacked on the right fight if needed.
Okay.
Because I don't know how Gallywix works, which is obviously the only boss that really matters. Can't fully say whether it will be there.
I mean, I don't
But
think
there's
it's
other
fair to
bosses I
say
can
that
see making them.
Gallywix is the only boss that really matters, because like last year, so Gallywix took 400 pulls. You spent was it 600 or almost 600 pulls on the previous 3 bosses combined? So I mean, like, you know,
Yeah, that's true.
Last
I
tier was
can see
harder
it.
than most, but like, you know, there's still a decent amount of bosses that matter before that.
Yeah, like I can see the way that it does its damage on things like Rick Reverb and Sticks.
Okay, well, Rick Reverb doesn't fucking
Being-
matter, but yeah,
Being really good, but like who's gonna really get stuck on them? I don't know. The 2 last bosses, I say except for Gallywix, like Bandit and Mugsy, didn't have like anything that was wildly super enhancement, but it could be really good at them as well. So yeah, I don't know. I would be amazed if there's not one where the tuning is right now. But if the tuning stays like it is for launch, is another question.
Okay, so where do you end up putting Enhance then for PvE this patch?
Like I said, I'd rather be wrong in the direction of like
Oh my god.
saying it's too good. So I think it goes in like 5 big booms.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's just so funny every time someone says that. Okay, fuck yeah. All right, I love to hear that. Enhance, man, Enhance has been on a fucking generational run. Like, actually insane for the past couple years. I hope current Enhance players who love playing the spec are enjoying your time and not... Because it's going to end at some point, but just enjoy it while it's here, you know?
We went on a screamer, and then, like, I think the dev did a really good job. And whoever let them cut what they did over the last 2 expansions, like, good job. Take notes, because that guy did it properly.
Okay, W. All right, thanks for the conversation, man.
Yeah, right.
Yep, love you, bye. Woo! I heard the L consonant start coming out, but he got destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Dude, I am absolutely killing people today. All right, let's do Warlock. Are you permanently show offline as Discord, even if you're online?
You know, brother, sometimes you gotta have time to yourself, you know, and I go online when I'm streaming, and then I go offline afterwards so I can filter DMs appropriately. Right?
Damn, I guess you're just popular like that. Goddamn, I didn't even. Okay, wow.
No, don't put that on me. Come on.
That's insane.
What's
Okay,
going on?
that's fine. So Warlock, what spec you want to start with?
Oof, we can start with Affliction. I mean, it was buffed yesterday.
Let's start with
Wanna do
Affliction
that?
then. So what is Affliction like in this patch?
So this is a M plus and raid tier list, or are we just looking at
M
raid,
plus,
or how's
M
it?
plus and raid. You're not necessarily ranking it yet. In order, I'm gonna kind of ask you like what the class is good and bad at, and then if it's in the Mythic plus meta, how many will be in the race comp, and then you'll put it on the list after that. But it's also
Got it.
And then at the very end of the call, if I remember, I'm gonna ask you one thing you'd want to change if you were a Warlock developer at Blizzard for any of the specs. So
Okay.
Affliction, what's different play wise for Affliction this season?
Nothing. They buffed Drain Life week 2, and besides that, Affliction has been the exact same. That's the case for basically every Warlock spec. We got very little attention at all this entire PTR. I mean, like, Affliction in more recent stuff, simulations had it below Prot Warrior, I'm pretty sure. It was buffed yesterday. I think it's like a 16% buff overall, damage-wise. Like, napkin math yesterday. It was pretty big. As far as the toolkit's concerned, I mean, it's Council Cleave, Hellcaller is a hero talent that's shared between Affliction and Destruction, and it looks to be very good this tier in the raid coming up. It's good in M plus for Destro. It's good for AF as well. Spread
Okay.
Cleave, dots are really strong. Tuning for Affliction has been, I guess, lacking a decent bit. The buff yesterday helped that a bit in single target. In M plus, we actually have a lot of, when we have CDs, we burst really high. It might be one of the biggest like stack cleave burst specs, but it's not consistent.
Okay.
And when it comes to like M plus, you want to be consistent. It's not BM Hunter consistent. Destro on the high end has a better AoE sustained mass cleave profile or AoE profile. So as far as like M plus is concerned for consistency and things, I mean, it's probably just average. The burst is exceptionally strong, but the single target's still lacking.
Yeah,
a
but
good
it
bit.
sounds like between the 3 specs, you have the ability to swap to a profile you need for any given fight, which is great for raid and like kind of sucks for Mythic plus because you just have to pick one, right?
Yeah, they all have different niches. I wouldn't say any of them are tuned exceptionally well. But yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like the AF buff yesterday, I think it is our best spec in single target. It's probably gonna be pretty well represented in the raid, like for probably the most played in the raid at this point.
Affliction.
I-
Okay. Do they have any execute?
There's Drain Soul, it was buffed. There's Death's Embrace, which increases your damage a little bit when it comes to like bosses being low. It's like a 10% buff to some spells. It's not a huge deal. It's gonna be mostly an AF and Destro raid. As far as like M plus, I mean, like I said, it's good. It's got good burst, but single target's lacking. It's not consistent, so I mean, not the best damage profile. If I had to rank it, which am I cool to rank it, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can do. I mean, first of all, do you think Affliction Warlock is in the race world first comp? You said yes.
I mean, you're gonna play one Warlock. I mean, there's potential to have no Warlocks on, I guess, certain fights, depending how it is. I don't think our tuning is great,
So-
but not really. You know,
We thought about swapping out Warlock a couple times in the last couple years, and every single time it's just not worth it. So,
Mhm.
I mean, their in quotes raid buff is just like, you better be right about to kill a boss if you want to get rid of wipe recovery and hellstones every pull and shit like that. You know, like
yeah.
it's just too time consuming to play around it. So,
Mhm.
okay, so you think there's one Warlock, but Affliction specifically, where would you put it?
I mean, it's probably like B tier. You can put it like above marks. It probably like yeah, like higher into B tier, give or take.
Okay.
It's not A tier. If Havoc and things are up there, it's not A tier. Yeah, so probably like right around there is fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So
All right, what about Demo?
Demo's Demo's Demo. Nothing really changed. I mean, it has a strong stat cleave profile. The single target's like fine. It's probably around 2.4 million in sims. AF's a little bit higher, but I don't think there's a whole lot of like stat cleave bosses this raid of great relevancy. Like there's some stat cleave, but not kind of stat cleave that Demonology necessarily wants. There's a lot of spread cleave, like on One Arm Bandit, Sticks cleave, that favors Hellcaller of Destro and AF a bit more. M plus Demo's like tier bonus is pretty strong. It's very consistent. It feels like BM level of consistent when it comes to having CDs every pack, but you lack utility with, you know, a longer kick on your Fel Hunter or in your Fel Guard versus your Fel Hunter. It's a stun. You have no purge, no dispel, and it's just a bit lacking. And on the high end, like Destro brings a really, really strong heavy AoE profile, which you want to see in with Mass Pulse. So I mean, I think Demo's the least played spec this raid tier, and as far as M plus is concerned, probably the least played as well.
Damn. So where would that be?
I mean, it's probably just lower end of B. The damage is fine. The tier set's pretty good. Probably just lower end of B.
Yeah. So the fact that you're not playing it isn't necessarily that it's bad. It's just there are other options.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting damage profile tier, and it's the first tier we've seen Demonology be sort of subpar for that in a while. So I think lower end of B.
What about Destro?
So I'm going to start here. I want to say something to you, and I want to hear your response. Destro's best spender and best spell to cast in single target is Rain of Fire.
So like the damage per execute time, the way you'd rather spend your resource is to cast Rain of Fire on one target.
Yeah, it happened during beta. I think it happened in Dragonflight. Now it's not ahead how much it was in beta. I think that's like a fundamental just design issue. I mean, that should probably be addressed. I know.
yeah. That I mean, I think everyone would agree. Not only because you're casting like a deliberate AoE spell, and there's spells that are designed to be a better use of shards or whatever, but it's also something the boss can move out of, which is like extremely fucking annoying. So yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to cast like Rain of Fire in single target this raid tier with like spread cleave being a thing. Hellcaller's profile and stuff favors spread cleave. You'll still cast Chaos Bolts and Shadow Burns, but I think it's a fundamental just tuning issue.
Yeah, for sure.
I was really, really surprised that we didn't buff Chaos Bolt yesterday. Destro is, I think, comparatively from like sims I had seen, Destro's like 2.3 million overall. Fury was doing, or Arms is doing 3.1. Shadow's doing 2.9 at this point. I think AF's 2.45, give or take right now, and Demo's probably 2.4. Warlock probably needs buffs or buffs across the board at this point. Destro needs a bit of a damage profile change up. Need to buff Chaos Bolt. Probably buff Shadow Burn. You don't need to nerf Rain of Fire. Just Chaos Bolt and Shadow Burn don't hit hard enough. The profile is good this raid tier. Hellcaller, Spread Cleave, Havoc Cleave is solid. A lot of Spread Cleave fights. One Arm Bandit. Muggsy has some tricks you can do there too. Same with AF. And in Destro, you have like a high-end, like a heavy AoE profile. But we were also bugged for a while with one of our new talents that made us really good at M+, and that was fixed recently. And the talent is so abysmally bad and undertuned, you don't play it anymore. Okay. So it's sort of in a spot of like, every lock spec needs some aura buffs, but I think Destro needs some retooling. You've got to buff Chaos Bolt and Shadow Burn. And yeah, so I mean, I think it's a mix of AF and Destro in the raid. As far as M+ is concerned, it's the best spec. I think it's the best spec we have in M+. When you look at consistency, AF will burst higher, but Demo has that solid profile. Or sorry, Destro has a solid profile. I'd probably put it lower end of A tier, probably. Like the very. It's tough, it's hard to say. It might even be. I think I put it high B plus probably. Just put it top of B.
Shit. Okay, I'm doing it.
I think it's tough because like I think it's definitely not meta, and I don't think with the actual talent change it's like on the outside looking in necessarily.
Dude, Warlocks are pure mid. Holy fuck, all three specs are in B.
I think they are. Like it's an odd tier because the damage profile of AF and Destro was really good this raid. It's probably the best tier we've had in a long time for Lock, but we just don't have the damage. Like,
okay, so if you're a Blizzardman, what is your number one Warlock change? You can only make one.
To one spec,
or like, if it's something that applies to all three of them, sure, fuck it. You can only
I
make
already
one
hit
change.
on buffing. I already hit on buffing Chaos Bolt and things. So I think you look at Affliction M+, and you got to address the quality of life. Affliction is a spec that's 10 years in the past, man. You got TBC quality of life in modern retail. It doesn't work. The quality of life is non-existent.
Okay, all right. I
also,
fucking love that shit.
Speaking of love, I love you.
Oh, fucking goddamn.
My man.
All right. That sucks for me. He fucking owned me. All right, calling Shadow Priest.
Yo.
Hello, Shadow Priest, man.
What's up, man?
What's life like?
Dude, this call that we're doing is crazy. Do you know how people are like telling me what to say in this call because they're worried about Blizzard nerfing me?
I mean, that just means they're passionate and they care. That's a W.
Imagine
you play a class and no one messages you because they don't care what you say. That means they fucking care.
Yeah, so Shadow's just Walmart, I guess. That's what they want me to say. That's how we're.
Is that true? We can end the call. That's fine. Let's fucking go.
Nope, it's not.
It's not? Okay, W. All right, so it sounds like you're happy about priests. Well, priests are. This is the okay, dude. This is what gets me. Like
You about to call me a whiny bitch? Is that what's happening?
No, I mean maybe depending. I'm just saying like anyone who's messaging the person who's gonna come on here and they're like, please don't say our class is too good. I promise you, has absolutely no effect. Like
for sure, yeah.
It just like they or even if no one knows right now, Blizzard's like, wait, this class is good. Next week they'll just like fucking nerf it. Like when they're seeing it in the raid, like it'll just get nerfed, right?
Yeah, I mean, like it's in everyone's best interest to like get it out there as soon as possible so that it doesn't launch in a crap state, right? Like that's how. Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. Like if you're a one class Andy, right? Like let's say you're a Shadow Priest. You just only play Shadow Priest. You fucking love this shit. You love dotting stuff. You like being all shadowy. Okay, cool. You are terrified of your class being nerfed because like the way they've designed this game is like if your class is good, it means you get to play the game more. It means you get invited to keys. It means you get into raids, like pug raids faster. It means you don't get sat for raid bosses. Like there's a legitimate reason. I'm not saying people are stupid and like caring about it.
Yeah,
you know? It's just
especially if you only DPS, right? If you're not willing to like heal at all, or you don't have another DPS spec to play if it's better or whatever, right?
Are Shadow Priest players, are they like adults going through an emo phase, or is it something else?
I think the biggest problem is we've been changed so many times. The community is just so split on what they want the spec to be, right? And I think some specs have this problem, but like talk to any Shadow Priest player that like likes to play Shadow and ask them what their favorite version is. You ask 10 Shadows, they give you 10 different answers.
Oh, really? You get like Mind Orbs.
Totally.
You get Surrender to Madness.
Seriously, yeah.
Okay.
And some people like hate Surrender to Madness. Some people love it. And so I think the problem that I'm sure the developers see too is like, how do you fix, like, you can't fix anything when no one agrees on what they love the best about the spec. So it's kind of a good thing, bad thing in that, like, there's so many cool things that the spec has had in the past that if there's a lot to pull from, but it can be really hard to, like, feel like it's in quote unquote like a good place because there's not a consensus on what people find fun or not always. So it's really hard, man.
Okay. What is it like going into Shadow for this patch though, just generally? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I think disappointed is all I'd really say. I think it's true for several specs that just kind of got ignored this PTR cycle. There were other specs that needed, help more than we did for sure, but still feels bad that we really didn't get any changes. There was some last minute like Band-Aid balancing last night, which is certainly nice. They pulled power out of the tier set and put it into the base spec. The tier set was like hovering at like 30% damage increase, which is fucking wild for a tier set. So they reined that back. Power's in the base spec, which will be better for like early prog until you get tier, which is good. And they also, it's kind of sad, the tier set was, you got procced mini power infusions, and you got more procs the more haste that you had. So if you put 2 and 2 together, like more procs, like you just kept chaining them.
Yeah.
So we had like 50% uptime on PI. You were literally playing like a slot machine spec, which was super thematic for the tier, but they obviously decided that was too unhealthy, and it doesn't do that anymore. So we are a more consistent spec, and our damage was kind of unchanged for the most part. So I don't know. I would have liked to see some of the problems that we've been talking about for a couple seasons, or like even in beta, are still here. They didn't get a chance to look at stuff. I know the last time I think we were on the call, I talked about they made a blue post like 900 days ago saying that they were going to look at shadow cooldowns, and they still haven't done it yet. So,
okay.
So that shit's still really sad. That's why I'd say disappointing. But I think ultimately, like, if you like playing Shadow, the Void Form loop is still really fun to play. I just wish they could build off of it a little bit more. What Shadow's good at, it'll still be good at, sustain damage, spread cleave, like that kind of thing. We just still have some of the kind of like the glaring issues that still exist, right? Which sucks.
Okay. Do you think there is a Shadow Priest in the Mythic Plus meta? Yay or nay?
I'm gonna say no, just because I think the meta is so tight around healers, and honestly, I think Disc and Holy are both looking really good. I think it's unlikely. I mean, yes, Disc got nerfed, but honestly, I think Disc is still looking like an insanely good healer. And like stacking 2 priests, like you're just flooded with external power infusions, like you're PIing a tank almost and shit.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think it's unlikely for that reason. If for whatever reason Disc and or Holy falls out, then yeah, I mean, I think Shadow's still really, really good at high keys. I think it's still one of the worst things to play in like a low weekly key, which sucks for like your average player, because you'll see top streamers like pumping his Shadow and keys, and then you go to like a weekly +10, you're getting your ass kicked, right? Like that's
interesting.
it really sucks for most players. So that still exists this patch, but high keys when packs are living long enough, yeah, you're gonna crank. So
So
kind of an awkward
maybe
spot.
later in the season or something like that. Okay. What about Race World First comp? Quick question. Do you know when was the last race in the Race World First? When was the last time a Shadow Priest was brought for the entire raid?
The entire raid.
Yeah, like they were good enough
dude,
where
it's
you just
been
brought
so
one on every
long.
boss. Yeah, I'm not lying. I'm kind of even making this up in my head because I don't actually know when this is true. I thought it was Sarkareth. It wasn't. We brought one on Sarkareth, but it wasn't there. Eternal Palace.
Eternal Palace would be close. A lot of guilds did, I think.
It would have to
really
be
good on Zool, I think. What was his name? The second to last boss was.
It was really
massive.
good on. It was really good on the last couple fights. It was the best class on the twin con. That wasn't Twin Consorts was the name, but like the.
I know what you're talking about.
Queen's
yeah.
Court was it? No, that
Queen's
yeah,
Court.
Queen's Court. It was Queen's Court. Queen's Court, and then it was really good on Zakul. And it was really good on Ashara too. We didn't play one on Ashara, but it's possible that Echo
It's
played
okay on
one
that
on like the
fight,
whole
yeah.
raid. Yeah, I think Echo might have played on the whole raid.
It's either Eternal Palace or it'd have to be just one of the Legion raids, like Emerald Nightmare or like Nighthold, maybe. I think.
Yeah, definitely Nighthold. But okay, so it's been a while, regardless.
It's been a while. A couple last boss. Yeah, I think Aberrus played on Sark and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been kind of
okay. Is
hard
this
tier.
What about this raid? What do you think?
Dude, this raid has so many good fights for Shadow Priest. I did all the testing I really could, and up until the second to last boss, I feel like the fights were just made for Shadow almost. So that's gonna feel great if you're like progging through it. I'm a little worried though on Race to World First that like Muggsy in particular doesn't have any like standout moments for Shadow. And what I've looked at and just read in the journal for Gallywix, I'm not like nothing is screaming Shadow Priest as much as like even compared to Queen that we saw. So I think Race to World First, I think it's super likely that you will see a Shadow on like One Armed Bandit and some of the earlier bosses for sure. But I don't suspect you'll see it in the comp too much just because again, Disc looks really good and Holy looks really good too. And I think again the PI thing, unlikely, but I think up until the last couple bosses, I think it's likely, but yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say without seeing Gallywix. I think my money would be no.
Okay. Where do you end up ranking it then?
I think I'd go high B, to be honest with you. I think there's quite a lot like with like tuning and that kind of thing that could kind of play out, but I think high B is fair just taking into account all of PvE. If low keys weren't so shit, it'd be A for sure. But I think that because that covers for so many specs, I think that's kind of where I'd put it. And then I think it'll be standout for a lot of fights and raids. So yeah, I think high B is good. Low A could even work depending on the fight. But I think if we're counting raid and Mythic Plus, I'd go high B.
All right, fuck yeah. You're a Blizzard developer. You can change anything about Shadow. What do you do?
Okay, if I had to pick one thing, we
one.
still have fucking silence in the spec tree. So we have to pick between losing a defensive point or losing damage to get an interrupt. And it's like the worst interrupt in PvE content. So why the fuck is that still a problem? It's been like years since that's been there. So yeah, that shit needs to go. Hey, quick fix, make silence baseline, make dispersion baseline, pick one of those. And like that's like the band-aid fix they need.
Okay, love you, blow up. No chance. I was out of the call instantly. He might not even heard the last part. That's crazy. All right, I am calling Mage. Porom. We're talking to Porom, the Magus. Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Excellent.
Are you ready to talk Mage? Do you want to talk all three specs or just Arcane?
I can talk all three, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay.
Confident Mage.
Is there anywhere you'd like to start?
Yeah, sure. So we can just start with Fire. I think that's probably going to be the one people are most excited for right now because they're watching M+ streams of it, blowing damage away in AoE.
Okay.
I think Fire is going to be that spec in M+, but I think when it comes to raid, it's going to not find the same footing when
why is
spec
that?
Fire. Part of it is because when you spec as Fire for AoE, which is going to be pretty common in the raid,
spec tree problem.
You kind of lose out on some single target and you don't really make it up in funnel or anything. And I think for that reason, I think like high A tier is probably appropriate, right? Because it's definitely that spec in M+, and I think you could play it in raid in any situation.
When was the last time you... This is just something that went through my head. I wonder when was the last time a class was like that class in Mythic Plus and wasn't something you brought one of or multiple of to like every raid fight.
I definitely think you'll bring Mage. Like you would definitely bring one. I think two will be pretty common as well, but I think it'll be Arcane. I don't think it'll be Fire.
Okay.
And a lot of that is driven because Arcane is really that spec that's got burst, funnel, and execute. It's kind of got the trifecta there. Spymaster is also really still good. And so I think like early prog especially, Arcane's gonna shine for that reason.
I don't think it's gonna keep being good. So number one, historically, anytime like old trinkets, especially ones in Mythic Plus you can't get anymore, I know that's not true with Spy Masters, they make sure to nerf them, and it's usually like the week before the raid comes out, which hasn't happened yet. And I can also just tell you that I know we have, and I bet other Race World First guilds, they ask for our input of like, is there anything we're missing? Is stuff like super broken? Are there problems? Weird things like people are using old tier sets, and old trinkets are still best in slot, which obviously is something they or really no one in the community wants to exist. They will, if there's anything history would tell you, is they will make sure those things aren't good. Puzzle box was
and
almost
I
good.
welcome that, right? I want to be able to get trinket upgrades next year, right? I don't want to be stuck with the same thing from last year, especially Spymaster, because it's kind of volatile if you die or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, there's something else about Spy. There's a few classes that like still would want to use Spymaster because of how bursty their class is and the way their class works. But also there are multiple bosses in this raid where like you could bring Spymasters at max stacks into it, and it would be the best trinket, even if it's not for the overall fight. It might be the best trinket for specifically the execute phase of like Mugsy or One Armed Bandit, right? So like they're aware of all of these things. So if you guys are worried about needing that trinket, I would bet a lot of money that those things are not BIS for your class next season.
Oh yeah, and I'm happy to hear, right? I would be happy with that. But I still think Arcane's profile is still going to be very well suited for raid fights. And I definitely think we'll see Arcane pretty regularly throughout the race and even after that into like lower tier prog.
Okay, I have a question for you then. How come Arcane is like always this spec that's great in raid, but like it doesn't usually transfer into Mythic Plus? Why is that?
A lot of that is due to target capping, right? The only untarget cap spell that we have that we regularly use in AoE is Arcane Orb, and it kind of hits like a limp noodle. So it's not really able to like leverage those 15-20 mob pools, right? Whereas Fire and Frost tend to the spells that hit hard for them tend to be a higher target cap, right? Like 8 or so for Frozen Orb and Flame Strike, and then Arcane is Barrage, right? And it's 5 target capped, and there's no AoE component to it, right? They actually added a new talent in 11.1 that makes it do a little bit of AoE splash around it, which is an artifact trait we had in Legion, but it's kind of impossible to get to in the tree, and I don't think it'll be useful at all.
Okay. Where do you think Arcane ends up then?
I would probably put Arcane just a little bit behind Fire, basically. I think it's going to be that spec in Raid. I think it'll be still really, really strong due to the burst funnel. Like, for example, 2 to 5 targets in addition to a boss, you're doing 33% more damage to the boss. The funnel is absolutely bonkers.
Okay. Where's Frost sitting in all this? So Fire has a spot in Mythic Plus, Arcane has a spot in Raid. What is and if Frost is missing something, what is it missing?
I think Frost is like you said, it's basically right behind these two in each of those areas. I think Frost is probably going to be high B tier, low A somewhere in there, probably high B because it's competing against Arcane and Fire, right? I think when it comes to raid environments, Frost just needs a bit more funnel than it's had. Like historically, that's something that Frost did really well, and that was a reason to bring it. 2 target funnel, right? And it's kind of just fallen off in that niche due to tuning.
Okay. Where does it end up?
I would say low A. I would say right at the bottom of A. I think Mage is overall in a really great spot for all 3 specs.
They can't keep getting away with this. Can't. That's crazy. If you were to,
I don't know that you'll stack it over like Warrior, DH, or BM, right? In Raid, but I think you'll definitely want to have an Arcane in Raid, and you'll see a lot of keys with Fire Mages.
Okay, I have a question then. So you talked about what classes might be in the Race World First Comp, or what version of Mage would be there. Do you know how many? If you were to guess how many mages are in the race comp for the last boss, how many do you think?
I'm not sure, honestly. I would expect at least 1, but I could.
Well,
see
I mean,
2.
that's
Arcane.
Yeah,
Arcane having that burst funnel execute pattern is just really, really strong on end bosses typically, right?
Yeah. Well, not to mention like execute. There's some execute on the previous 2 fights for sure. So yeah.
Yep. Muggsy is a really good one too, because you actually get the funnel from the immune ads, even though they're immune, which is just hilarious.
Okay. All right. We love that. You could make one change. You work at Blizzard Entertainment for a day. You can make one change to mages. It can either be a specific spec or something that affects all 3. What would you do?
There's a lot I would do for sure, but I think if I had the opportunity, I would aim to help the class as a whole. And I think I would probably do something about the time anomaly, shifting power, and inspired intellect nodes in the class tree.
Yeah.
Throughput in class tree is just really restrictive in how you interact with the class tree in general, and I think that's probably a thorn in most people's side.
All right, yeah.
Love you, thank you, goodbye.
Jesus. All right. All you can do when you get knocked down is to get back up, chat. Get right back up and just keep it moving, you know? All right. Wow. All right, calling Tettles. Hello?
What's up, dude?
What is your Discord picture?
This is good. Yo, has anybody told you that this chain looks tough?
Oh, thank you, dude.
I think this looks good. It's a good look. Keep it up.
Let's fucking go, yeah. I need that after I just got absolutely obliterated by that last guy.
Yeah,
so you're here to do
right.
something for the first time ever, I think. You're going to talk about 2 specs from 2 different classes.
Okay, for the record, I'm going to talk about AUG. I've played AUG and Raid. I'm not much of a knower in terms of like numbers on AUG and Raid. I love playing AUG and Mythic Plus. Big vibes guy for Mythic Plus AUG, but not a big Raid guy on this spec.
That's fine. You can just make it up.
Okay, yeah, we'll be made up.
Beautiful. So do you want to start Moonkin or AUG?
All right, we'll start with Moonkin, and then we can have a funeral for AUG.
Oh shit. Maybe.
Time.
Except everyone said that a million times before. Okay, W, Moonkin. So what is Moonkin? Moonkin has been in a weird spot, I feel like, for the last couple of raids, right? It's been like,
yeah,
you'd maybe bring this class, but like, man, we'll bring like a Resto or a Guardian Druid instead, and like not bring it, and like maybe Feral for one of those raids, and then it's also just been like super squishy the whole time. Like, where like, how does Moonkin feel right now?
It's about the same. I think it's a little bit better than it has been in the past. I think a lot of that actually comes down to like damage profile of the raids. Like I did a lot of the raid testing, and there was just every single boss had some AoE. Now the Race World First guilds do this thing where they turn these AoE fights into like the meat grinder style, so you're not actually able to get good AoE. But I still think there's going to be some like Rick reverb and
wait. This is so funny,
by
by the way. This is a Moonkin being tilted like you're looking at what the acolytes on the last phase of Ansurek should have been, and they're like, this is my phase, and then it's just like, nope, we're actually just gonna run around in a circle and cleave everything.
Firac. It's literally Firac for some. Oh, they've spawned these ads 50 yards apart, and somehow we've gotten them all stacked, and now hold on, they're getting blade
so
stormed.
True.
What's going on?
So true.
I think it's better. I think it's better this tier in Raid. I kind of had this expectation that it's going to be the Mark of the Wild buff, but it looks like the rest of Druid people also believe they're going to be the Mark of the Wild buff. I don't expect there to be multiple Druids.
Is there like, okay, for the classes in a raid that are like fighting for a raid buff, is there like, I remember seeing all the people being like, oh, I think is there like interclass propaganda of like arguing and trying to put other specs down just so your spec is the one that brings the buff?
No, I think the Druids are just like aligned and dooming at all times.
That's actually always been that's historically true. Okay, so are they? Do you think they're the raid buff? Do you think?
I thought Moonkin was from testing, but I didn't really see too much Resto Druid. That's kind of the thing with like raid testing. You only get the specs that people in that raid testing section wanted to see, and you can look at what other people are doing, but it's not always gonna be super indicative. Maybe that guy's never played Resto Druid in that group, and so you're like, oh, maybe that spec sucks, but maybe that guy's bad.
I think looking at healing or damage meters and testing is the biggest waste of time meme ever.
Yeah.
It's completely irrelevant.
I thought it felt okay. I think that Moonkin single target's actually really low. But in general, I still think that there's enough AoE in this raid that you can ring a spec that has like low-ish single target to bring your Mark of the Wild.
Okay. Yeah, I also feel like for so many guilds for a long time as well, this might be something we might want to talk about after the AUG conversation, but like, let's just say AUG is actually dead. If that's true, and it has been said multiple times, but this being the first time it would actually be true. If that was true, that means there's 2 more DPS spots in a raid, and more specifically 2 more range DPS spots. And I think in most guilds, this has been true in our guild, I'm assuming it's most guilds, where like your AUG spots were Moonkins. Like AUG, like Moonkin players and AUG players are like very similar, or oftentimes those are the same people. So like in so many guilds, it might just end up being those AUG players just being Moonkins, and that spot making sense.
Yeah, but in general, I think that Moonkin's largely the same as it's been the past couple of tiers. It did get a little bit of a survivability game this tier. You have 4% 20% more passive stamina than you had in the past, which is
That's
a
big.
blessing.
No, that is not nothing.
That is a decent gain.
Yeah, I would say in most scenarios, 4% HP and like 4% DR are essentially the same thing, and 4% passive DR would be crazy. So yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, so I think that Moonkin is looking okay. I think it's actually pretty good in Mythic Plus. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be in like the meta comp for Mythic Plus. I think there's some stuff that's maybe
I think it's
better.
extremely likely to be meta Mythic Plus from someone who knows literally nothing about it, and it's purely because if you're not playing Resto Druid and Augs are being removed and there's an extra DPS spot, Mark of the Wild is extremely attractive if you don't have a Guardian.
Fire Mage looks really good. You know what goes great with the Fire Mage? A Mark of the Wild bringer. It's that chicken. But Feral also looks good in Mythic Plus, so you know you get Mark of the Wild from somewhere else. So.
When has Feral ever been played over Moonkin in Mythic Plus? Season 1 of Dragonflight, you played Feral in the MDI, but people still preferred Moonkin on live. Has it ever happened? Has it literally ever happened on live?
I don't think so. Kind of had the iron grip on that one a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think Moonkin's good. I think it's like high B, low A. I would probably be inclined to put it in like low A. I think it'll probably be seen in the race world first, but I don't think you're not class stacking it. It's not close to that good.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that's. Well, I'm not going to give any particular information about the race, but like the classes that lend itself more towards like holy shit Moonkin is good for this are not near the end of the raid.
That's true. Yeah, you know, like it's a bunch of the first couple bosses, like One Armed Bandit too. And there's just a bunch of random AoE on that fight also.
So Moonkin there. All right, so let's do it. Let's talk. I previously said in chat I was going to let the Aug person only say 10 total words, but we broke the rules a little bit because you are the Moonkin and Aug person, so that is officially gone. Let's have if it's true, you're saying there's a funeral for Aug. I just want to say after the second patch in Dragonflight, they have been nerfed, and every single time people said they're dead, and they ended up being brought again and again and again. So are they actually dead?
I heard that it was actually looking good in raid testing. Again, we didn't have any of the Augs in our raid testing. Nobody wants to play that shit in raid testing ever, basically. So I actually didn't know where they were relative to other classes coming into raid testing. Aug is really weird on AoE where specs aren't balanced in this game on AoE. And so bringing 1.5 Frost DKs on Brute Twister Ovanax was, you know, you were buffing multiple of these Frost DKs. And so the Aug basically just buffing that Frost Death Knight on Brute Twister was a great value. And so that was the only fight that you played it during Nerebar.
Yeah, you could always make the argument that when you're playing an Aug and you're buffing a specific class at a specific time where they are doing so much more than every other spec can do, they will probably always be good.
So there's, I think, a chance that it's good in raid, but it was, first off, nothing in logs works with Aug right now. It is completely shambled. There is 100 different abilities that aren't being attributed properly, to the point where I was logging my Aug runs and I was getting beat by the tank in like pretty much all of these runs. I was literally just like losing to the tank, and it's because none of the damage was attributing properly. I was already feeling like Aug was a little bit on the way out, and then this nerfs that they hit the Aug with yesterday, especially the closest clutch mates and shifting sand stuff, I'm pretty sure that's the final nail in the coffin for Aug. I think the spec is like go outside tier. Like we are re-rolling, like log off. We are finding something else to play for this next patch. Like that spec is going to do horrible damage in Mythic Plus.
Okay. So Mythic Plus, you think it's for sure like it is cooked. It's gone.
Raid is weird. I don't know where they started at. Just raid wise is the problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, most patches that's not true. I mean, I can tell you that we spend an extremely large amount of time doing very annoying repetitive things to try to get any information on how powerful Aug is, because using logs, like you mentioned, it's broken now, but it's ever since the main guy who designed Aug left, which was like in the like near the end of Dragonflight. Like it's just been cooked since then. Like logs have been completely inaccurate. So you've had to figure that out. I think you're on the right track where, like, you know, as long as you have niches that are super powerful, like if you historically, do you guys remember like those memes where like Warrior was executing, where it's like playing that anime thing with the guy screaming and it's just showing Warrior going up and up and up and up the damage meter? Okay, like when you have execute phases when a class is that strong at that, when you have spread cleave where only one class in your raid is that strong at something, when like there's something happening where one person or two people, which you'd probably bring multiple of those things, are doing that, Aug will probably always have value if you can bring it like that. But it's about, can you make it happen on every fight? Right, and then it's also its relative power. You even saw last year where Augs are better than they are now. You saw us play Dev because Dev was a really good class, but it was just easier. Like Aug would have probably been slightly better than Dev at the end of progression, but you would have had someone doing something significantly harder, and that's actually not better. So
I mean, Aug actually had one of the coolest tier sets on PTR launch. I think it had one of the coolest iterations of like this jackpot 2-set 4-set, and then they just nerfed it like I want to say I think it was like 2 times in a row, and they've made it just substantially worse. Like you were basically sustaining your Ebb and Might with 100% uptime without pressing any other button. Like you never had to refresh your Ebb and Might. It was crazy. And then they just now your Ebb and Might is like I don't even know, somewhere between like 80 to 90% average uptime, and your damage is a lot lower because of it too. And it's like Blizzard also made these changes where they made the change coming into this patch where you can no longer buff the tank and the healer in Mythic Plus too, which I think is probably good for the health of the game, but it's gonna make the spec, you know, it's less valuable.
If
for
you're
sure.
saying nerfing something about a single spec is better for the health of the game, I'm pretty sure 100% of the time that nerf was a good thing.
Well, people also
Right.
people didn't want the spec to be balanced. People wanted it dead, and so like there's kind of a weird thing there.
I mean, if it's, let's just say they did actually kill Aug. It's bad in Mythic Plus and it's bad in Raid in every scenario. Then that hasn't happened yet, so it's fine. Like, ask any other class in the game. Every single class in the game, except for probably mages, has been absolutely dog shit for an entire patch. So you know what that's like. That happens to specs. It hasn't ever happened to Aug. So them being dog shit for a patch so they can actually see how far the pendulum can swing before they're actually bad, I think is fine for them being like balanced for the future. So it's okay if it happens.
Some people are of the opinion that they can't balance it either. I don't think I agree with that. I think that there's ways that you could balance it. I think that Blizzard is just really bad at doing it.
The way they can balance it is they have to make it brain dead to play, so the delta between like a really sick player and the average player that support classes were designed for is not large, which they've kind of been doing, but like they need to even make it more like that. And then they just need, it's already easy to play if you do it like that. They just need to remove all the Giga Brain shit from it so that you can balance for the top player and the support player at the same time. And they haven't done that. All right, W. Cool. All right, so Aug is in Go Outside tier, and Moonkin, where do we put Moonkin? Low A, which is really good. I feel like that's the best Moonkin's been in a while, like overall. I don't know exactly where it stacks up to the other Druid specs, but okay, cool. You have any? Oh yeah.
GG's.
Well, before anything else, do you since you're covering 2 specs, you're a Blizzard person.
Oh yeah.
You can change something about Moonkin. What is it?
I'd buff their single target. I think their single target is like really, really low. I don't know exactly how I would approach buffing their single target. There's something there though that I would be looking to tackle. Just increase their single target.
Okay.
You don't necessarily need to increase the AoE, but yeah.
Well, what about Aug? What would you change about Aug?
Oh my god. I like here's the thing. I actually like playing Aug. I actually think that Aug is fun to play, especially like the min-max nature of it. I would make it balanced without people hating you. That's the thing that I would change. I would make people stop typing delete Aug, fuck you, and you.
I mean, Aug hate has been pretty easy to understand for a long time because like part of it is initially it's like there's this support spec, but let's be real. If Aug wasn't BIS in Mythic Plus basically since it came out, or if it was replaceable in Raid, that how violent the like delete Aug chants have been would be either completely removed or reduced by a ton. People are like usually mistaking being mad about a support class being in the game and just more mad that there's just like someone taking their spot doing something. And as soon as you remove that, I don't know how mad people are about the idea of Aug. It's purely except there's one legitimate reason I see. The fact that like you can't look at details in game and it means anything. I think that's fucking stupid. I hate that. I hate that like the details meter means nothing because it's
so dumb.
And even logs mean nothing. Like why has that just been removed? That's the only thing about Aug where I'm like this thing being in the game just makes everything worse.
I would guarantee that logs and details are always accurate if I had to do like one big change. That way you can actually tell how good or bad it is a lot of the time.
All right, cool. All right, that's it. I don't like your podcast. Love you. Bye. Fuck yeah. All right. All right, calling Preheat and we're talking dev. Hello?
Yo, what's up?
Hey, we're here to talk about Dev Evoker. By the way, I clicked on a tweet of yours earlier. It was something about Aug, and then I watched like the first 5 seconds of it, and then you started like reciting a poem or something, and I had to get out of there.
Yeah. It's a heartfelt video for people who enjoy augmentation so that they can, get over the loss.
How do you feel about Aug right now? This is not about Aug. But like, how you feel?
Yeah, so I think Aug in Mythic Plus, probably not so great, but I think maybe in Raid it still has some value for guilds like yours, right? Where like people are playing really well. So I'm not sure if I would say like go outside when it comes to Raid specifically, but yeah, it's definitely like this is like a really big nerf, and it's after multiple nerfs, so it's down pretty bad.
Okay. All right, so Devastation. So maybe the class the most poised to take those like Raid spots, or maybe. I mean, I feel like Dev, even if they've ever been close to being good at Mythic Plus, has never even been considered because Aug exists. So like maybe they can gain there, even if they're not currently good at it, just in the future. So About Devastation right now, what is it like to play this patch? Like last patch, you had that Scale Commander multiple target cleave thing. I've heard Flame Shaper's been like kind of on the rise. I'm not sure if you play it though. Like, what's the situation with Dev right now?
All right, so if you're not playing Aug, right, there's still a need for stuff like Spatial Paradox, stuff like Time Spiral. These are tools that are used on a lot of raid bosses, super useful. So it just comes down to like, well, where are you getting those, right? You can get them from Preservation, you can get them from Devastation. In this patch, Devastation is mostly staying the same in terms of like its relative power overall. Scale Commander, very strong still and extremely strong in cleave. However, Flame Shaper, like you mentioned, is actually pretty good. It's good in single target. Now, here's the issue with it. As soon as you add like a single extra target, Flame Shaper just like explodes. Like it cannot, it's like 20% behind Scale Commander at 2 targets. So like it just has nothing to really deal with cleave in the way that Scale Commander does. More about how Scale Commander is just really good, right?
Yeah.
Also, its hover uptime, terrible, right? Scale Commander, part of the reason why it's so insane is because you basically use hover all the time. You can have hover up like the entire first minute of combat. So yeah, the castle moving stuff is insane. Obviously, having the deep ret sometimes not so great for guilds that maybe don't have as good of Dev Evokers, but yeah, overall, I'd say like it's really strong. I think it definitely seems like the option if you need to have those tools, the Time Spirals, the Spatial Paradox, you probably want to fit some Dev Evokers into the raid to get that buff.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I think that's kind of a fascinating conversation, actually. Like, so let's just say right now, like 2 Augs have been in the raid basically since they've come out. So you haven't had to think about bringing in Evoker raid buff. You've never had the question of like, okay, we currently are making our best comp and Evoker's not in it. How valuable is the singular Evoker raid buff, like Blessing of the Bronze, but also the fact that you're getting the other things? Because like, I think you could convince yourself that you don't need Blessing of the Bronze on any given fight, I guess. It is probably better than people think it is because it like makes some stuff line up a little better. But like just doing a fight with a Time Spiral versus without a Time Spiral, like, do you actually need a Time Spiral? The answer to that is like probably yes, but like, I don't know. I could see there's no like, you know, with mages, it's easy. There's like Arcane Intellect. Like, you just need that. But all of the things with Evoker, they just have like 3 or 4 things where you're like, man, that's really nice. But the thing is outside of Blessing of the Bronze, they all stack with each other. You know, like if you're bringing a second one, you just get another Zephyr, you get another Rescue, right? Like that stuff is all like there. You can kind of make an infinite, not an infinite, but you can make use out of a ton of those things. So I just think it's a fascinating raid buff to think about because you could bring 0, but like you kind of. It's different than every other raid buff. I don't know.
It informs your strategy, right? And like also your comp too. So like if you have a bunch of priests, like having extra rescues is also huge. You know, spatial stuff like that for healers that maybe have issues like casting. If there's like a really intense healing portion you need to take care of while there's a lot of movement, like it can be kind of like a get out jail free card. So like overall, like huge quality of life. But let me just be clear, like Dev, all the utility aside, right? Just put it to the side for a sec. In a raid that's this cleave heavy, Dev is really strong. Like Dev has like really good single target damage compared to like everyone else now with this last adjustment. That last thing, by the way, it wasn't a nerf. Like that was actually a buff to Dev. Okay. It has like really good single target and it has like really good cleave, like competitive cleave. We're talking up there. It doesn't have the same benefit as something like Arcane where it has funnel, right? Like you aren't getting like more single target from the cleave necessarily, but it is still really, really strong and it's versatile and it just brings a lot of benefits. So yeah, I think whenever you're like considering your comp, I'm sure you're thinking about this, like how many Evoker buffs do we have? How many rescues can we use here? Time Spiral, stuff like that. Like that could affect like the strategy and then the strategy could affect the comp, right? Like for everyone downstream who's watching the world first. So yeah, I think Dev is like in a pretty good place.
I actually
overall,
think
like,
regardless of the race world first, actually, I think Evokers are an example of a class that most guilds that are getting cutting edge, that are doing heroic, whatever, that are bringing a comp, usually people do copy the race world first comp. I will say though, let's just say we don't bring any Evokers because it's like some very like, you can gain a little bit more damage by doing this and like we can make it without the utility. I think that would be an example of you guys should not do what we do because anytime you can bring multiple of a class, like Evoker, and it just makes your life easier. You just have more rescues, you have more Zephyrs. Those are things that just make everything so much easier where you probably don't need the very last percentile of damage that we did because you just have more gear or the boss has been nerfed or something. So like I would actually say if you're most guilds, you should probably look to still bring Evokers regardless of tuning because they just make raid bosses easier. You can carry your worst player around literally. You can, you know, Zephyrs are really valuable. Sometimes that class has a cheat death, you know, like it's sick. I wouldn't be super off of it regardless of whatever you rank it.
Yeah. So I will say though in Mythic Plus, I mean Dev's damage like isn't terrible, but it's also not great. And I think that it's like way more competitive in Mythic Plus. So I don't really think like a lot of Augs or like a lot of devs out there are like seeing the Aug nerfs and they're like, oh yes, it's finally my time. Finally, I'll be picked in Mythic Plus. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Like there's other classes that will probably be in line in front of you, right, to take the slots. So even though there may be more slots open, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to get in there. If anything, it just means that like if you want to get that key done, now you just don't really have the option to swap Aug and get the key done. Now you're like kind of locked out, right? So I don't necessarily think that it's correct to like deny Devastation Evokers in Mythic Plus, like their damage. Obviously, in most cases, like most keys that people are running, it's totally fine. But I just want to like make sure that people know that I guess the effect of like Aug getting nerfed. Like you're not necessarily getting like a free pass now.
I don't think in Mythic Plus. I think in raids, I don't know exactly how this is going to play out, and I'm not leaking anything, but I would be willing to bet that Aug nerf leads to more preservation and more Devastation Evoker spots in raid over the rest of the expansion, because I think the utility that class brings is extremely fucking good. And I don't mean at the top level. I just mean like just in general. It's just not only are they similar players, like they're probably people who have played those specs in general that are able to play other ones now, but it's just that stuff we've been used to for a couple years is good. If you just start removing multiple time spirals and paradoxes and stuff from the raid, you're gonna really feel that.
Dude, the healers are so addicted to spatial, it's crazy. Yeah, you can't take that away from them now.
Yeah. Okay,
like,
so you don't think there's gonna be a Devastation Evoker in Mythic Plus comp? Do you think there will be any in the race world first, and if so, how many?
Yeah, I think so. I think you know, let's just like put aside the fact that like they could tune Aug more since everyone's complaining right now. I think still just like having 2 Evokers in the raid just kind of makes sense for a lot of the bosses that we've seen, and like maybe having an easier strategy. Probably at least 1. I mean, you definitely want that buff. I think Demon Hunters will complain a lot in some other classes too if you don't have it in there. So yeah, I think Dev absolutely has a place in the raid comp.
How many?
You know what? Fuck it. 2.
Woo! Okay. So 2. So
if you would have asked me yesterday, I would have said maybe 1. But as of today, I'll say 2. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what is that ranking? What does that rank?
Yeah. So all things considered, I think it's probably like low A, because you know Mythic Plus is like kind of dragging it down. Like Dev is winning big in the.
I mean, I think that's fair. Like people
but...
were complaining about Fire Mage earlier because he said that like people were like Fire Mage needs to be 5 big booms, but he was saying Fire Mage is that class in Mythic Plus, but it won't be played in raid. I feel like by category, your class needs to be BIS in Mythic Plus and raid to probably be 5 big booms, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think Porom did a great job with the Mage rankings, and I agree with the Fire Mage placement. I know a lot of people in chat are molding about that. But
well, that's just because they're Mythic Plus players, and they only care about Mythic Plus, and they're thinking this list is only about that, and they are probably unaware that it's that, or at least he said that it wouldn't be played in raid as much. So okay, W. All right. You can change one thing about Dev Evoker. What would it be?
Okay, so Dev Evoker talents are a complete mess, and they have been like pretty much forever. The playstyle itself, like having a channeled spender, feels like really bad. I think maybe they need to like kind of redo a lot of it. It's hard to like say one thing, but if I had to like point one thing out, it'd probably be just like how the builder spender rotation works right now, specifically Disintegrate. I hate having a channel spender. Feels really bad. But you know, we make do.
All right, cool. Love you, bye. Destroyed. Oh, he kind of instantly left the call too. That was pretty quick on his part. He didn't stay in there like I've gotten some other people. I know you guys can't see that, but I gotta be on my toes now after Porom. Let's do Windwalker. So I usually call Baby Lonius or J-Funk for fun, or a couple other people. But I have someone that I talked to, I think it was last season, that I'll call again. Let me turn off streamer mode so I can get his name. I don't know why streamer mode does this. Seiryoku or something? Seiryoku? It's some anime shit for sure. I'm probably getting the name wrong, but here. Fucking love anime, dude. All right, calling him up. Hello?
Hello.
Did I say your name wrong?
Yes, you did.
How do you say it?
Seiryoku.
I'm okay. I can't believe I'm okay.
You can just say Siri or say.
Yeah, okay. I'm not ever gonna say that. Okay, so Windwalker. Last patch to this patch, what's it feel like? Is it like gameplay wise? What's this class feel like to play?
I'm not exactly happy that they've removed Mark of the Crane. Like, I sort of get that not everyone liked tagging targets in AoE, you know, understandable, but it does make the single target rotation a bit wonky. Like, spinning Critcake is like second highest damage source in single target now. That doesn't feel right to me.
Wait, so like but like gameplay wise, do you still only press it for spinning Critcake procs from Shiji,
or that's Shiji, yeah.
But do you press it
it's
outside of
not
that?
It's not quite so good that it's being pressed outside of that yet, but
Okay, then
it's
I
getting,
think
like risky.
well, okay, I personally don't, as long as it doesn't affect your single target rotation, I think that's fine, because I think a big issue with Monk, especially in season 1, was it kind of lost that innate ability to cleave things. You know, like whether you're single targeting or cleaving, historically that's been their thing. Windwalker monks, that was their entire identity, and then in this expansion, like every melee can do it, so they don't feel unique in that way. In fact, they kind of fall behind. So I feel like
the fact that you can just like blow up a Dance Strategic proc immediately rather than having to build up Mark the Crane first will probably be really nice if you're trying to steal AoE from a Fury Warrior or something. But you know that would I'm not sure if that's the in the kind of intention that we should be going for.
Yeah. Okay. What do you? They got Slicing Wind as well, right? They got a fucking Plunderstorm ability.
Concept. I mean, the fact that they just copy pasted the Plunderstorm ability doesn't strike me.
Well, it's also interesting. You are the first class in the entire game to get an Empower ability that isn't an Evoker, right? Like, I think that's pretty significant. And is it fun to play with?
I don't mind it. It is a controversial ability. Like, there's already people that don't really like the channeling thing on Windwalker, and putting an empowered ability on top of that probably just, it's not an improvement to those people. But I do like the sort of, the feeling of charging and releasing in that sense, so it works for me. And the fact that you only need to empower it at the first level to get full damage out of it is fine. Like, the only thing that you're gaining from fully charging it is distance, and you generally don't need distance.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I'm fine with it. Let's put it that way.
All right. So Windwalker wasn't seen really in Mythic Plus meta, I don't think, last season. Do you think that changes this season?
I mean, I think we're in a better spot. I just don't like Windwalker's always sort of on the verge of greatness, both in raid and in M+. Like we're like 1 or 2 steps away from just crushing it. But those 2 steps are never being made by Blizzard. And that's a bit sad, but yeah, I don't think that we're going to be meta if things like Fire Mage, BM, Destro are not going to be reined in a little bit.
Okay. What about in raid? Where do you think they're at in raid right now?
We're looking pretty optimistic, especially if you're just comparing it to melee, and even in the overall rankings, we're looking pretty good. And especially because this raid seems to have very little pure single targets, which there are some fights that have very convenient ad waves, which will work great with the Emperor's Capacitor buff and the Power of the Thunder King talent, so that you can just unload a max power Crackling Jade Lightning immediately and every time.
Okay, well, so I guess another question to ask them would be, do you think from season 1 to season 2 that Blizzard has somewhat fixed the issue with Windwalker's passive cleave or active cleave being just way less strong than all of the available things you could bring instead of it?
I would say they've done more than that. Like, if anything, our low target cleave is probably where we excel.
Okay.
And our like high AoE is where we just start to drop off in comparison.
Okay, that's good. Good to hear. All right, so how many Windwalkers do you think you see in the Race World First Comp? Wait, actually, before you answer that, when was the last time a Windwalker was brought for an entire raid?
Oh dear God, an entire raid. I mean, the only reason he wasn't... You didn't bring Trill because he was doing PvP last time, right? So I guess it would be
you could have
to you if he would have been brought to Azortharion.
I think it's... So I've thought about this a lot. It's whether you would have brought a second Havoc or a single Windwalker instead of your second Fury Warrior. And if you were to ask me the day before we killed the boss, I would have said both of those things were better. But then in reality, you just had so much damage to kill it that the added Fury Warrior consistency of killing the spiders was definitely the best thing. So I want to say we may have played him, but I don't know if it would have been the right decision. So I wouldn't count last raid, but it's been a long fucking time. So Castle Nathria.
It's been a long time since it has been like obviously one of the biggest things that people think about when you choose to play Windwalker, whether it's an entire tier or not, is do you need the Monk buff, the Mystic Touch buff. So then it comes down to if you don't play a Brewmaster or a Mistweaver, then you'll bring your Windwalker anyway. I don't know if that's always valid, because Mystic Touch is probably the weakest raid buff out of all the specs or all the classes.
It's a little underrated. I think people are like, you can just sit Monk. Like, it's definitely good enough to bring, but like among, like, for example, like the Monk buff, I think on average is better than like the Hunter buff, right? So like it's the last time that Windwalker Monk was the Mystic Touch for the raid, though, I think was Shadowlands Season 1. I think it was Castle Nathra.
Yeah,
I think.
and that's also just because Shadowlands Season 1 was just a good raid here for Windwalker in general.
Yeah, they were sick. They were really good. Yeah, so I think it was then. So it would be the first time since 2021 or the end of 2020. So that's been a long fucking time. So do you think there's a Windwalker in the comp?
I think you can easily justify it, yes.
Okay.
We have really solid single target, solid burst, and enough AoE at will to not fall behind in that regard.
All right, W. All right, where would you put it on the list then?
So I do want to keep my rankings in terms of raid and M plus sort of separate, because I think if you're going to combine them, I mean, I get that I have to combine them for this list, but
yeah.
There is some pretty solid differences in how they are being perceived, at least. I would say like a mid A for raid and barely a B for M plus, which would I guess end up at low A for overall.
Yep, that logic makes sense to me. Okay, so there's been a lot of changes to Monk, especially like with stats in this expansion, which I think like every time I've asked the question of like what you would change, so many times it's like make our other stats do something. If you could change anything about Windwalker Monk, what would you do?
Yeah, funny thing is like we got that, right? Haste and Mastery have essentially gone through the roof in comparison to how they were before.
Yeah.
I actually have kind of a list of things that I would want to change. I get that I won't be able to go through all of them.
You have to pick number one.
My number one is giving Strike the Windlord and Celestial Conduit proper AoE scaling. Like, I don't know if they are the worst in the game in terms of AoE scaling, but they are definitely down there. And it doesn't feel right to me, especially Strike of the Windlord is just a bait. Especially, like, you know how the tools for Strike of the Windlord looks, right? It says deal damage to all target. It has zero implications that it has reduced AoE scaling at all.
Oh, so it might even just be a mistake.
Terrible.
Yeah, okay.
It is either a mistake or an oversight or whatever.
Okay, all right. That sounds good. All right, love you, bye. Woo! Guys, I'm on a fucking hot one. I might not miss one for the entire rest of this thing. We do have an amendment to the list. Critcake has messaged me because based on the amount of things that have happened since then, he would like to make some changes. He says, okay, I want to change the warrior rankings here if people are ranking their specs this low. He said, I would like to move arms from 5 big booms to high A. And the reason why, he said, probably among the top tier in raid, good in Mythic Plus, but definitely not meta. And I'm assuming we've mentioned multiple times, like 5 big booms kind of implies you're really fucking good at both. So I think totally makes sense. I accept this change. Well, not that I really have the choice to accept it, because obviously they have the ability to make their own rankings. But I feel like for what other people have done, that kind of makes sense. And then he said he would like to move Fury to low A. Good in raid and Mythic Plus, but probably worth in arms in both. Very tanky. So moving Fury to low A. So there has been a change. Wee you, alert, alert, alert. There's been a small change. Now enhances the soul spec in 5 big booms. Holy shit. Holy shit. Enhanced shamans are sweating because they think this list matters. All right. Let's call Hawk Corgan. Let's do it. Let's get Ellie out of the way. Wait, did you just move your Discord to show online instead of offline because I brought it up?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So Ellie is in this weird spot. I feel like they've like kind of banged for a while. You had this weird thing last season where they were like super sick and then they were nerfed a little bit, but then they went back to being super sick. But it hasn't.
Oh yeah, basically. Yeah.
When was the last time an Ellie shaman was brought for an entire race world first? Do you remember?
I have no idea. Like if you count Sham for BDG, it's probably not that long ago. If you consider him relevant for the race.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. So like one of the top 5 guilds in the race brought an Ellie for the whole 2. That probably matters. So it's been a while. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean before that, Kana also mained Ellie for most of it, right? Like then it's probably BFA at some point.
Dude, shout out Brightleaf back from BL if anyone remembers that name. W. Okay, so
yeah. I mean,
what
TLDR, right? We got a massive rework in 0.5.
Okay.
Very good rework.
So you like the way it plays right now?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have a damage pattern now, right? We have a burst cooldown.
I want to ask if something's changed. I remember a lot of complaints from LA Shaman before was like you either played this like fire build, which I was told is like the jingly keys baby build, and then there was like the other builds which were like I guess slightly better but like harder to play or something like that. Is that still somewhat true?
Not at all.
Okay.
The issue previously was basically right. You had builds that just made lava burst always be available, so you always just pressed the glowy button and didn't press anything else. Spenders obviously, but you never pressed lightning bolt, right? And then you had the season 2 Dragonflight lightning build that had just a very strict order of buttons you were always pressing, which is harder to execute properly, right? Because you need to actually manage your movement and everything. But all things considered, it wasn't particularly interesting, at least to me it wasn't. So, yeah. But they fixed that. They removed a lot of the access to Lava Burst. They changed a lot of the buffs that Lightning Bolt could get. For example, Surge of Power only generates 1 overload instead of 2, and the overload is weaker by itself.
Okay.
Point being, we actually press all buttons now in various orders. Maybe the spec became a little too easy now. There isn't that much going on, but considering that we have a damage cooldown now, we actually play
I don't
around
think that like the spec being easier. The question is it fun? Like, is it just as fun as before, or do you think it's designed well? Like, is it fun to play?
Oh, I personally think it's fun to play. One of the issues basically in the hero talents, right? Like the Farseer build, it's basically just you spawn some guys and they also throw lava bursts.
Yeah.
And that comes across as kind of boring to people.
Yeah, but like the thing is something being hard doesn't mean it's good. Hard difficulty does not equal quality. Like something can be easier and still be really well made and really fun.
Yeah, for sure. The big issue comes, like they changed Primordial Wave in a few ways for 11.1. So that's probably not being played in Mythic Plus, which means that in Mythic Plus it basically just boils down to cast Chain Lightning, cast Earthquake.
Yeah.
Repeat. Not quite that easy because we are going to play Echoes of Great Sundering most likely, so you're going to have to alternate single target and AoE spenders, but it's more or less just 2 or 3 buttons, which you're just going to repeat, and yeah, it's not the most interesting thing.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of the issues, right? Like they changed a few things for 11.1, which I'm not entirely sure if they planned for those to be quality of life changes or what exactly their goal was, but they just broke some things that they didn't really need to touch. Primordial Wave previously applied a Flame Shock and then echoed your next Lava Burst to hit all of your Flame Shock targets. Now it just hits everything with the Flame Shock, so you can just apply less Flame Shocks and it just doesn't do anything. It says it deals high damage, it does nothing. It's a joke. It's like 0.2, 0.3% of your damage output for a fight. Like, not entirely sure why that is. Like we were joking about around that they could just buff it by 2000% and it wouldn't do anything. Still waiting for that buff, but we're gonna see. But yeah, because you're not gonna play that in Mythic Plus most likely, or maybe some people will. But if it's optimal, it's questionable. There isn't really a lot to do.
Well, speaking of Mythic Plus, do you think so? They were like really good in this past season. Do you think in this upcoming season that you will play an Ellie in Mythic Plus in like the high Mythic Plus meta?
I mean, that's the thing right now as well, right? Like if you look at the top keys, we were talking about this today in the Discord. I think the first Ellie I found is in key number 82 or something, because Enhancement is just better for the most part, which doesn't mean Ellie is bad, right? It just means Enhancement is better. And we're going to run into the issue with how the tier set works. One of our defensives, pseudo defensives, Ancestral Guidance has been removed, right? We can't self-heal anymore. We can't heal the group, which is a very weird decision. And to compensate, they buffed Healing Stream Totem by 80%, which still doesn't do anything. We're just not going to press that button. Anyway, also, we can use our Earth Elemental as a defensive cooldown, right? It gives us, 15%, 20% health? Something like that. But if we accidentally get a tier set proc, it will just despawn again, which is suboptimal.
Oh, because it spawns your fire Ellie or whatever your
Storm
main
or fire,
Ellie. Yeah, Storm or Fire. Okay, that's... Yeah, that doesn't seem great.
Yeah, that's a bit of like only when you are playing Primal Elementalist, which you will be because the Elementals have like 100% uptime and are very fucking strong. So you're just gonna play that talent. But yeah, I mean, kind of annoying.
Okay. Do you
not
think?
entirely sure if we're able to survive a high Mythic Plus key, but let's see.
What about Raid? Do you think they're good enough in Raid?
I mean, same issue again, right? Like DPS doesn't seem like comparable to the top dogs. It's not bad in any way, but it's, I think Sim is like 2.6 or something. It's just worse than Enhancement. Enhancement brings the Shaman weight buff anyway. So the question is just, okay, why would you bring an Ellie, more or less, right?
Well, I mean, you're potentially gaining 2 ranged or 2 like DPS spots with Aug leaving, but the problem is if those aren't other evokers, Ellie Shaman is one of those classes, and I don't know how casty you are right now, but like historically you've actually really benefited from time spirals because of the ability to cast while moving. So like the idea that you'd be replacing the time spiral classes with the things that kind of needs time spiral is a paradox, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like you're the best raid buff, then that's kind of a tough position. You would just need to be tuned really well. Not to mention that, again, Ellie has just been like in raid purgatory for a really, really long time. Like it just hasn't, it's almost been good enough. We had a really good Ellie player in our guild. And we had to get rid of
it's questionable how many people we even still have that can play the spec at a high level, right?
Yep.
And also the other thing is because they changed it, like deeply rooted elements, the thing that can proc Ascendance, right? Previously procced off of Lava Burst, now procs off of Spenders. And because the Spenders have a dynamic cost, right? Some of them are more expensive than others, depending on what you're spec'd into. They made them scale with the cost now, right? So it's more or less, it doesn't really matter into which spender you spec, you're reasonably equally likely to proc Ascendance. Point being, they removed the bad luck protection for that.
Okay.
So where previously you were pretty much guaranteed to get a proc within like 20-ish attempts, sometimes you're just not going to proc now. Sometimes you're just going to press the button 50 times and nothing happens.
Okay. All right, well, where do you think Ellie ends up ranking then? You have to pick for both.
Yeah, I mean, considering that it's pretty good still in Mythic Plus and probably about average in raid, probably put in middle of A or something.
Okay.
I mean, people will be middle of A, not 5 big booms.
Yeah, I know. I
Well,
was just fucking with chat
delayed,
for a second.
yeah.
Yeah, I know, you're good. Yeah, so middle of it. Okay, that works. All right, you can change, you're a Blizzard dev. You can change anything about Ellie. What do you do?
I mean, considering that they are pretty much set into Flame Shock being a thing that we do in AoE, I want them to actually work with that, right? So actually have ways to spread the dot. If that is Liquid Magma Totem, just applying 6 dots. If that is Lava Burst, spreading the dot. However they want to manage dot spreading, just do it. Just make it easy. Just don't have us think about it, and then have some actual thing that benefits over that, right? Like if that's Primordial Wave, sure, but then make it deal damage and maybe scale with Mastery. Just have it overload something. Do something interesting with that, right? But not just have us jump through hoops and then don't get a payoff and just be annoying.
All right, that sounds good. All right, thank you for your time. Love you. Bye. Out of here. I'm on a fucking roll right now. All right, Wordup has alert. We do have a potential change. I got a DM from someone who's already ranked, and it's the Enhanced Shaman. Hold up, what's gonna happen here? Alert. He says, I just want to make the amendment that I'm disappointed Critcake pussied out for dropping the rank, and he should have stuck to his guns with us and 5 big booms. Holy shit, I thought he was going to move down Enhance, but he actually just used his amendment to slander someone else. Holy shit. That is crazy. Okay, that's W for sure. All right, so Cybear is going to come on to talk about Feral Druid, and he's currently on a London bus. So let's see how this goes. Are London buses dangerous? Who knows? We'll find out. Hello? Oh,
hello?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
You can hear me? Okay, cool, man. I'm like just about to get off my bus.
Fuck yeah. Do you want to wait until you get off the bus, or do you want to rip it now? I can call someone else first.
Dude, we can rip it on this bus right now. We can full send it. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. What's it like to play Feral this patch compared to Season 1?
So we're actually, people like us right now. We're doing some damage, so that's been pretty positive. I think we're in like decent hands, honestly. I need to see more on the raid. Obviously, we just got buffed. Like today, I actually had a dream this morning that we were going to get buffed, and then I woke up and we had buffs. So I don't want to know if that's magic or something, but I definitely did something. So that was pretty cool. But I think those buffs, like melee attack and then adaptive swarm buff, and then also to the it was like a 20 or 40% buff to like the 2 set, which is also going to be big for our finishers, I believe. So we'll see how that plays out in raid. Obviously it comes out soon, so haven't had a chance to test that and how we look from there. But like Mythic Plus, we've been doing decent. The problem is, as always, like depends how good Boomy's going to be, right?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
So it depends how Boomy's going to be for the Mythic Plus ranking. Well, also kind of Resto Druid too.
Well, the raid as well.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
So for Mythic Plus specifically, do you think that Feral could break its way into the meta this patch with no Aug being there?
Oh, dude, you can't ask me a question like that. I'm gonna get death threats. Okay. There's potential. I think there's potential. Oh, it's so hard to answer a question like that. Maybe. Our damage has been solid. This buff is gonna be nice. Maybe. I heard Fragments was playing one. I don't think that's for Mythic Plus, but I heard he might be playing one. So
that's fun. That's a throwback.
That's a positive sign.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe. I don't want to say like, because I think there's so many things that go into class being meta, right? I'm off my bus now, by the way, so we're good. We're chilling.
Fuck yeah.
I think it depends how good balance is going to be. Depends how good Resto is going to be, and then depends. I mean, Org has just been like neutered, so that's pretty good. Maybe. We've got some good funnel, which is important for Mythic Plus as well.
Yeah, a couple of funnel
defensively, we're decent. Yeah, so maybe it's so hard because it depends how good everything else is, right? Like, it's not just how good your class is or your spec is. It depends how good everything else is what I would say. But maybe.
Okay. Sweet. So I want to ask you, do you think... So we've had a raid where a Feral Druid was in on every boss recently. It's kind of rare that that happens. Do you think that could happen again this raid?
Oh, bro, I don't want to hit you with another maybe. Maybe.
Bro, that's not fair. No one else did
maybe.
a maybe. You gotta fucking put your shit on it or not.
Oh, I gotta go full in. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say on every boss. Oh, dude, that's so hard. Well, let me ask you this: how melee friendly do you think the raid tier is gonna be? Do you think it's gonna be all right?
As melee friendly as like the last 4 or 5 raids have been, which is out of raid testing, everyone says it's gonna be terrible, but in reality, it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's always the way, right? Everyone always says it's going to be terrible, and then it's always fine. Sure, man. I think we could. I think we could be good. I think we could be good. I need to I want to be honest. I want to hold my hand up here because people always give me shit when I come on here. But I need to see more of the bosses. Like, I have done some PTR testing, and I have seen some of the bosses and stuff. But I need to see how everything's sort of shaping up, and obviously class tuning's happening daily, or weekly. But yeah, I think there's a good chance. I think Feral is actually looking pretty strong right now. Definitely stronger than it was last patch. So yeah, there's a good chance. Let's just say yes.
All right, fuck
Sure.
yeah. All right, so where do you rank it? You got to rank it in combination for both. Moonkin is in middle of A.
Oh, you went for letters? You didn't do any fun...
There's
fun
there's
stuff
5
this
big booms at the top, and there's
You've
one.
gone lazy, Max. I didn't want to say it, but you gone lazy. You didn't even name anything.
Yeah,
You just
you're
put
right. You're right. I have
numbers
yeah.
of the letters this time?
Well, there's some names,
fell off,
but
bro.
yeah, you're not wrong. I've streamed less in the last 2 months than I think I've ever done in 2 weeks before or something like that.
You need to stop making commercials with Atlas all the time and start streaming. You know what I mean?
I gotta do my job, yeah.
Jokes aside. Yeah, jokes aside. You got to stop delivering pizzas and get these tier lists pumping.
Just fucking rank
S is
just
top.
rank it.
Rank it. Let's go A. Let's go A.
Where in A?
I can't see a stream right now, so I can't see what else is in A. But maybe front, like towards the top end.
Okay. Shit. Fuck it. We'll do that. That's fun. Okay. So, well, if you can change one thing at Blizzard, what would it be about Feral?
About Feral? I'm more of a Mythic Plus guy, so I'm going to go for something Mythic Plus based. I would like to see Tiger Fury reset on Re-Stealth or combat drop or something, so that we don't go back to... This is a big discussion for Ferals, where they liked Dragonflight Feral because it was very explosive with energy and stuff, but that causes problems where you then become a global locked, not resource locked. Feral should be resource locked to some degree. I don't think they should bring back Old Predator, but I think that they should just modify it so that we get Tiger Fury on maybe Re-Stealth, so that you can go into packs and have a little bit of that burst. You don't really want to be finicky with a 30-second CD. It's too low to want to have the hard min-max a 30-second CD, and you don't want to sit on it. So that'll probably be my big thing that I would say. For Raid, I don't 100% know. I don't know how people feel about being locked into Apex because the new tier set. Some people might like it, some people might not. For me, I'm personally fine with it. So yeah, I don't think I've got any Raid changes right now.
All right, cool. Sounds good. All right, thanks for your time. Love you. Bye. Dude, he got me with a bad one last time. Fucking smoked him this time. I don't think anyone can get me for the rest of today. I'm too on it. All right, we have 2 more people. We have a Rogueman, and then I think I did have a Rogue message me. I'm going to have to scroll back a little bit. Who is it? It's this guy. It's streamer mode, so I can't even see I know their name starts with a G. So I'm just going to call them, and we're going to talk about Rogue, and it's going to be fucking sweet. It's going to be amazing. And then we're going to try to find a Ret. Currently don't have one. W. Calling a Rogue. Hello.
Hello, gamer.
Hello. Are you ready to talk rogues and stuff?
Of course I am.
All right, which one do you want to start with?
Which one do you prefer to talk about first?
I want to start with ass. So,
okay.
What about assassination last patch compared to this patch? What has changed? Is it anything?
Nothing. A big fat goose egg.
Okay. Well, are they strong though? Are they feeling good?
Yeah, they're probably pretty good. I mean, if you like current assassination, you'll probably like the next assassination, because I think there's a recent theory crafty thing where you can send a dry shiv to get a little bit more damage at some place in the rotation, but for the most part it's basically the exact same spec with 0 tuning.
Okay. Fuck yeah. Do you think rogue ass could make its way into the Mythic Plus meta this time around?
It was seeing a little bit of representation this tier, no? Or
No, it was, yeah.
Am I crazy?
It was good, yeah.
So I think like after like kind of what happened throughout this tier is that Subtlety Rogue kind of got spam buffed that it kind of really didn't need. And I think more and more people, at least on PTR, are trying sub and realizing that sub is either just as strong or stronger because its damage is a little bit more front loaded, has shorter cooldowns. Being the worst spec in the game outside of cooldowns matters less when you can kind of, be, hey, we're going to do a big pull, blow all my cooldowns, do a bunch of damage. So I kind of expect Subtlety to get a little bit more popularity, but who knows if that catches on. Sin still has stuff like Iron Wire, still does a lot of damage, etc.
Okay. What about, do you think Ass is the rogue spec? Or the raid spec, sorry?
So I personally, I'm on the sub rogue train, okay? I think Subtlety is
in both, okay.
Yeah, I think Subtlety is really well positioned next tier. I think, without getting into like fight specifics, I think there's a few fights where subs burst AoE 1 minute 30 cooldowns are a little bit more valuable than Sin's kind of generic high single target with a lot of damage on a 2 minute timer. I think the 130 is just going to be a little bit more convenient because the tuning is so tight on like both of the rogue specs. Because rogue is getting basically no changes, no tuning, so it's going to be kind of an echo of Nerebar Palace where Sin was a little bit better on the earlier fights, and then Silken Court you played Subtlety. Queen you could kind of play either. I think most people ended up defaulting to sub to help with like the P1 platform and the web set, like the second set of Silken Tombs at the time. Obviously you don't need that now, but yeah, I think Subtlety is going to be really well positioned for the upcoming tier. But realistically speaking, like Sin and sub are kind of interchangeable. Kind of just depends on what timer you need on the fight specifically.
All right, well, before going into Outlaw then, about Ass and sub, where would you rank both of those?
I would probably put them both in A. I think a lot of people are putting specs in A, but I think like you're going to play one rogue. It's just kind of how it has been for years now. Because Trophic Poison, good profile, good damage, good single target, like decent AoE, sometimes really important AoE. Doesn't die. It's just kind of like a good spec to play as a one of, so you're probably going to play Assassination or Subtlety.
Yeah, okay. And then just talk to me about Outlaw. Why was Outlaw really not mentioned? Is it like undertuned? What's wrong with Outlaw?
Outlaw has like a lot of problems that kind of like compound in on themselves that like kind of make it less desirable every single tier, where it's like people have, sorry, I'm saying like a lot.
That's
where
fine.
What's it called? The spec has a lot of like biases with it, where it's like it's kind of inconsistent. It doesn't have a cooldown. It's target capped. It has no burst. It's like hard to play. It's kind of like Surrender to Madness and Breath of Syndragosa playstyle right now, where as soon as you get like downtime, you get a mechanic, you make a mistake, it like tumbles out of control really hard. Which is just kind of sucks in a progression setting. Like Outlaw might do a lot of damage on on Queen and overall. I think like a lot of the Warcraft logs parses now are like Outlaws for whatever that's worth. But like that kind of doesn't matter when you need damage to kill Platform 1. You need damage to kill Silken Tombs 1. So you kind of need like really specific fights where Rogue doesn't solo a cooldown set, where Outlaw can be something that's worth playing. And then in addition, target cap kind of sucks for dungeons where as dungeons get more refined, it's like, all right, let's play an Aug. Maybe after the exaggerated death of Aug is upon us. Cooldowns are valuable, and Outlaw not having a cooldown is a pretty big downside, and not having very high damage to compensate for that fact makes it a little, less desirable to play.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So where do you think this ends up? Like, is it something you think we'll see like zero play? Is it like completely off the radar? Or do you think there could be like a fight specific thing you play it on?
I haven't looked too, because I'm kind of convinced on sub, so I've been mostly focusing on like, gearing for sub, kind of being in the brain space to play sub. So I haven't really looked at fights specifically, be like, oh, like maybe this is an Outlaw fight. But the problem is that any fight that you can justify Outlaw, you might as well just play the rogue spec that you've been playing the entire tier, because the margins are kind of slim. If you're not like good at Outlaw, it's kind of hard to justify being like, oh, let's just pick it up and play it on this fight, when you could just play Subtlety and kind of do the same thing and kind of just coast along because your presence isn't that important, right?
Yeah. Okay. So where'd you end up putting it?
Despite calling it terrible, like realistically speaking, it's probably B, because it's not that bad, but I would just say C to be a little spicy.
Ooh, I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people who rank stuff near the top. That is pretty common, though. It's like you're basically saying like you think your class is strong, but it's not like crazy strong. And B, yeah, I don't know. I think that's fine. Okay. All right. You can change one thing about Rogue. You can only pick one thing. It can be for any spec or something that affects all three of them. What would it be?
Oh, I think I would say that the hero talent. Can I say like the hero talents across the board just need a second pass? Is that a cheater answer?
No, that's perfectly fine. You think the hero talents suck?
Yeah, it's just like the problem is like obviously most specs have the best hero talent, right? It's like, oh, you know, like kind of default to this. Like I think Red is doing the, you know, specs default to a good hero talent, but Assassination, you only play Deathstalker. Fatebound is unplayable. It's bad, clunky. It's kind of shit. With Subtlety, Trickster feels significantly better to play, especially as they've kind of fixed some of the annoying parts about it. Deathstalker is really annoying and intrusive. And then for Outlaw, you still can't play Trickster because it's centralized around Killing Spree, which is a button that is unpressable. You cannot press Killing Spree in Modern WoW. It is not a button you can press. So when you have a hero talent dedicated to a button that isn't usable in hard content, it kind of puts you in a corner, which kind of
that's
sucks.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, thanks for your time. Love you. Bye. He was even about to cue his mic too. I have a cadence now. I have a fucking cadence. Okay, so we only have one spec left. The old Retribution Paladin, in which, as usual, I do not have anyone, I think, to talk to. Someone said you could talk to Bolus. I think he's somewhere east of here where he's like not awake or something. I could also just make it up. I could just make it up. Why not? Or I could just call a random Ret, let them start talking and be like, what would you change? They say nothing and then I just hang up. I don't know. It looks like with most things, it would just be A tier, you know? Why not? Oh, I can't put it back down. Just shove it in 5 big booms and call it a day. You know what the worst part is like someone actually would just like skip to the end of this video and look at the list and not, because like I think that's what most people do actually, or they go to their specific class that they care about. Why would you care about every class in the game, right? And then like they just screenshot it at the top and then it ends up it actually like sucks or something, who knows. and then they're like, I played it because I thought it was 5 big booms. Come on. All right, Dorki said this DPS list needs an intervention. Oh shit, who's he calling out? I mean, I can't really give you my take on it, but all right, who's this? Who the fuck is this guy? All right, someone just messaged me and I have streamer mode on and all I know is their name starts with a B and they said, call me, I'm in the bath and I'm a big Ret guy. I'm just calling them. This could be a bad choice. Hello?
Love you. Bye.
All right, that's it. I'm putting it in 5 big booms and I'm ending the stream. See you guys later.
Bye.